Hi everyone, this is a bit of a different one, probably you can tell by the title, but I've been playing a bit of Call of Duty recently because, well, I was a World at War teen and the series really was something special then. The stories were something good and there was no reason for it to be, but we got some of gaming's best twists and story beats that make you consider who wins, loses, commits war crimes, and who should, or in most cases should not, be a hero. However, playing the series recently, I realised there's a lot of stuff going on here, like way too much. Plus there are at least 6 titles about the Second World War, and how can there be that much to cover in a war that lasted only around 5 years? And that's only when war was officially declared. Everything else kind of jumps in halfway. I tried to put it out of my mind and booted up Warzone, and I realised this is the title, this is it. This is the crux, this is the point all of Call of Duty merges on. I saw this title as it stands and realised that we were all wrong. There was no alternate universes in this world, that it was all spanning the same world with the most insane timeline. And I realised that nobody else was going to try and plot this whole thing. I'm the weirdo who's doing this. So, in light of the Modern Warfare 2 release coming up and our recent foray into the surreal with the new Season 3 of Warzone, at least it was new when I started writing, I thought, let's get putting all of this together, shall we? Where do we start? Well, I'm going to split this off from the zombies timeline, mainly because it helps with the complexity of, is everyone dead? And zombies don't feature into the Warzone mix, so I'm allowing myself this much because honestly, this took long enough as it is. I will also be levying some of my own views on some of the actions that take place, just as obviously that seems an important thing to look at throughout this experience. Also, a small note from the writer's room here is that all multiple outcomes, usually in the case of things like the first Modern Warfare reboot and Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, these outcomes have been solved the same way D&D World works, with a D20 dice roll, so success being 11 to 20, failure being 1 to 10. Pre-Christian history. Krampus is believed to exist there to punish the wicked as an inverse of Father Christmas or Saint Nicholas. 343 Common Era. Saint Nicholas dies age 73 in Myra in the Roman Empire. 1773, the first printing of the name Santa Claus is made, popularising the idea of him as a gift giver in the Western world. 1864, August 22nd, the Geneva Convention is signed by Swiss Confederation, Grand Duchy of Baden, Kingdom of Belgium, Kingdom of Denmark, Kingdom of Spain, French Empire, Grand Duchy of Hesse, Kingdom of Italy, Kingdom of the Netherlands, Kingdom of Portugal and the Algarves, Kingdom of Prussia, and Kingdom of Württemberg. 1903, December 17th. Orville and Wilbur Wright create the first plane that can fly, known as the Wright Flyer. 1914, January 7th, first Aero Squadron is formed. October 5th, Voisin III becomes the first plane to shoot down an enemy aircraft. July 28th, 1914 to November 11th, 1918. World War I, or the Great War, takes place and are the time that characters such as Stan Papajak Jakowicz, the Polish tank commander from Call of Duty 3, Jean-Guy Robichaud, the Canadian lieutenant from Call of Duty 3, Colonel Davis from Call of Duty World War II, and Metz, the villainous Oberscharführer from Call of Duty World War II, earn their respective stripes in the battlefield. Hermann Freisinger served as a courier and informant analyst. Thomas Bolt serves in the Spanish military. The Fokker E-1 plane becomes the first plane with a machine gun. Manfred von Richthofen gets the name the Red Baron and wins 79 to 80 battles during World War I. 1917, July 5th, the Fokker DR-1 plane is created. October 25th, the Russian Civil War begins. 1922, October, Russian Civil War ends in a Red Army victory. 1926, March 16th, Robert H. Goddard creates and sells liquid rocket fuel. September 3rd, William Pearson has enlisted in the US Army at 16 under a false ID. Unknown year, Carver Butcher joins the British military. Herman Frasinger serves in the military police and will lead to his joining of the Gestapo. 1927, May 21st, Charles Lindbergh reaches transatlantic flight with his plane the Spirit of St. Louis. 1928, date unknown, Wade Jackson joins the US Navy. 1932, May 20th, Amelia Earhart becomes the first female pilot to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. 1936, March 5th, the Supermarine Spitfire makes its first flight. Date unknown, Arthur Kingsley joins the British Army. Constance Muller is forced to join the League of German Girls. Thomas Bolt serves as a volunteer in the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion during the Spanish Civil War. 1938, April 3rd, Arthur Crowley has joined the British Expeditionary Force. May 16th, Joseph Turner graduates and starts serving with Pearson. November 7th, Paul Daniels, brother of Ronald Red Daniels, is killed by a wolf on a hunting trip. November, date unknown, Anna Drake's town was demolished along with her friends and family by the Kristallnacht. Anna Drake subsequently joins the O5 network. 1939, April 1st, the Mitsubishi Zero makes its first flight. September 1st, the Second World War begins with Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland. October 6th, Poland is taken over by Nazi Germany. Date unknown, Lucas Riggs joins the Australian British Army. Soldan Herdvik fled Amsterdam with Jewish students. Richard Webb is conscripted into the British Army. 1940, October 26th, the P-51 Mustang makes its first flight. Unknown date, Daniel Clark joins the British Communist Party. May, unknown date, Ronald Zimet is forcibly conscripted into the Wehrmacht. May 10th, the Battle of France has begun. June 25th, Axis powers win the Battle of France. Camille Denis joins the Marquis and gains the codename Rousseau. July, unknown date, Arthur Crowley joins British Special Operations Executive Secret Service. 1941, April 6th, Yugoslavia falls to Axis powers. Milos Novak joins Josip Broz Tito's National Liberation Army. June 22nd, Nazi Germany launches Operation Barbarossa and invades the Soviet Union. July 3rd, end of the first battle of the invasion of the Soviet Union, the Battle of Bialystok-Minsk. August, unknown date. Private Lucas Riggs and the Rats of Tobruk garrison fail an ambush attempt on the Royal Italian Army and Africa Corps. Riggs, Desmond Des Wilmot, and Lieutenant Robert Jacobs discover intelligence relating to General Erwin Rommel and destroys a German depot in the process. The squad are later detained for insubordination. August 23rd, the Battle of Kiev begins. September 2nd, James Doyle and his crew are attacked by a Messerschmitt Bf-109 while bombing Holland. James Doyle and Major Ingram join the Dutch resistance and fight to the train bridge. James destroys the bridge while the train is crossing under the command of Major Ingram. September 9th, the Siege of Leningrad begins. September 26th, the Battle of Kiev ends. October 2nd, Operation Typhoon to capture Moscow is launched. It fails. December 7th, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor. The USA is now prompted into the war. December 19th, American conscription laws are amended. Daniel Takeyatsu is enlisted into the US Army. Francis Lanakila is thought to have enlisted in the American military. Corporal Lewis Howard is thought to have been conscripted at this time. Mateo Hernandez is thought to have been conscripted at this time. December 16th, Vasily Ivanovich Koslov begins training for the 13th Guards Rifle Division of the USSR in response to Nazi Germany's declaration of war against the Soviet Union. 1942, date unknown, Private Chernov begins his wartime diary. Polina Petrova joins the Red Army. Isabella Reyes's father is killed during the Bataan Death March by the Imperial Japanese Navy. Isabella joins up with the Hukbalahap resistance. Shinigori Ota is thought to have been conscripted into the Imperial Japanese Navy. Halima Zambari is assumed to have enlisted in the Somali resistance around this time. Padmavati Balan is thought to have enlisted in the Indian National Army around this time. Beatrice Mercia is thought to have enlisted in the French resistance around this time. Gustavo dos Santos encounters a member of French resistance while in his new playboy life. After learning about what he can, he joins the Brazilian Expeditionary Force, known as the Smoking Cobras. June 4th, Battle of Midway begins. US Navy pilot Lieutenant Wade Jackson participates in the Battle of Midway with tail gunner aviation mechanist's mate Mateo Hernandez. June 6th, Private Joe Miller and his squad receive basic training in North Carolina. July 18th, the Messerschmitt 262 becomes the first jet-powered plane. August 10th, Private Martin completes training at Camp Toccoa, Georgia, USA. August 17th, Private C. Miller. We are unsure if this is meant to be the same person as Joe Miller or if this is a different person. Is rescued by Sergeant Tom Sullivan, Corporal Roebuck and Private Polonsky, squad mates of Final Front, after watching his own squad be tortured and executed on Macon Island. Alex Mason's father earns a Purple Heart during the operation and is transferred to the 80th Infantry. August 23rd. The Battle of Stalingrad begins. German forces capture half of the city after bombardment, and this causes the Red Army to retreat to the bank of the Volga River. Red Army medic Polina Petrova witnesses the Luftwaffe invade Stalingrad. Boris Petrova is executed by a Volkskramager squad. Polina is able to escape with her brother Misha and several Soviet partisans. September 17th. Dmitry Petrenko escapes the Fountain Massacre in Stalingrad with Sergeant Viktor Reznov after their abandonment by Red Army higher-ups. The two assassinate General Heinrich Amsel and escape. September 18th, Private Alexei Ivanovich Voronin and the Red Army cross the Volga River by boat to counterattack. Alexei is to provide covering fire from a rooftop. The Red Army captures Red Square. Alexei is ordered to enter the city's ruins and report to Major Zubov. Senior Sergeant Yakov Fedorovich Pavlov defends the now legendary Pavlov's house as part of the battle for Stalingrad, naming him a national hero. September 20th, Private Alexander Sokolov crosses the Volga into Stalingrad and takes the refinery under the command of Sergeant Oleg Pushkov, then leads a charge against Mamayev Kurgan Hill under the orders of Tanya Pavlovna. October 3rd, Lieutenant Tanya Pavlovna and Private Alexander Sokolov reach through the sewers to a tractor factory. Pavlovna provides sniper fire to protect the building as the two, with a new tank crew led by Nikolai Badanov, escape. Pavlovna is injured in this altercation. Badanov is ordered to take back Red Square. Badanov gives the radio call allowing for the Kadyutska rocket strike to destroy the approaching panzer column. October, unknown date. Private Lucas Riggs and the Rats are ordered by Major Henry Hams to form a defensive line. Riggs disobeys the command and tries to retake the hill and call in bomber support with Private Des Wilmot. Des is killed in action. October 29th, Sergeant John Davis and the 7th Armoured Division create a diversion and defeat Axis troops to gain important intel. November 3rd, Sergeant John Davis and the 7th Armoured break the enemy lines using tanks as cover, ending in Davis radioing High Command of Operation Supercharger's success. November 6th, 7th Armoured defeat German forces at El Daba, Egypt. Davis retrieves important documents and radios the Navy to destroy German cargo ships. November 8th, Private Roland Roger lands with his squad in Oran to take an airfield from Vichy French forces. Roland's brother Stretch takes part in a bombing raid off the coast of Oran. November 9th, Junior Sergeant Alexei Ivanovich Voronin goes through the sewers of Stalingrad to meet with and defend an apartment building with Yakov Pavlov. December 2nd, Private Vasily Ivanovich Kozlov and the Red Army demolish a building once held by Axis powers. December 8th, Vasily Ivanovich Kozlov is given the task to repair the communication wire while under heavy fire. The Red Army then go on to take the railroad station in Stalingrad. December 24th, Badanov has been promoted to Major and leads an attack on the Luftwaffe air base in Tatinskaya as part of Operation Little Saturn. 1943, unknown. Detailed information from the Manhattan Project is stolen from Los Alamos by the Russian spy known as Perseus. January, date unknown. Polina Petrova eventually acquires the nickname Lady Nightingale as she pursues Leo Steiner, the Wehrmacht commander responsible for the invasion. Mikhail Misha Petrov dies in an explosion. Leo Steiner is then killed by Polina Petrova. January 3rd, Dr. Friedrich Steiner begins development on what is codenamed Nova 6. January 15th, Private Vasily Ivanovich Kozlov and the Red Army assault the center of Stalingrad and defend it against waves of German soldiers. Tank Commander David Welsh and the 7th Armoured Tanks battled Axis tanks and flanked the Flak 88 guns in Libya. January 28th, Edward Carlisle's unit of the PPA destroy a German fuel depot in Matmata, Tunisia. January 23rd, Edward Carlisle and Sergeant Bob Starkey are ambushed by German troops near Qasr Tarsin. They escape and reinforce a unit that is both capturing a German fortress and rescuing Private Alan Rowe and Sergeant James DeHart. February 2nd, the Battle of Stalingrad ends with Soviet victory. February 9th, Private Joseph Miller's squad attacked the last Japanese positions on the island of Guadalcanal in the Pacific. February 13th, Private Roland Roger rides a Stuart light tank during the drive to Tunisia, or Tunisia, depending on how you want to say it. February 19th, Private Roland Roger and squad are attacked by the Afrika Korps during the Battle of the Kasserine Pass. The unit are able to disarm a German minefield and recapture an artillery emplacement. February 19th to 24th, Lieutenant William Pearson, Lieutenant Joseph Turner, T5 Frank Elio, Staff Sergeant Augustine Pear, and Major Arthur Crowley take part in the Battle of Kasserine Pass. Pearson disobeys an order in attempt to save soldiers' lives, but loses more men in the process. Pearson is punished by Article 15 and is demoted from lieutenant to technical sergeant. February 22nd, Private Roland Roger and squad defends the town of Kasserine from German assault until American medics leave the area and they then fall back. March 10th, Sergeant John Davis and the 7th Armoured barely escape Tougane in an enemy armoured car while fighting off pursuers. March 11th, Sergeant John Davies and the 7th Armoured retake Tougane by taking over the most important sectors and defeating German forces that occupy the city. March 30th, Sergeant John Davis and the 7th Armoured assault the town of Matmata and defeat German soldiers that occupy the city. They then defend the town from Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers. July 4th, Private Yuri Petrenko and the Red Army defeat the Wehrmacht soldiers and blow up Elephant tank destroyers on the front line during the Battle of Kursk. July 10th, Private Roland Roger and squad lands in Sicily and assaults Italian positions on the beach, then moves inland. July 11th, Private Yuri Petrenko and the Red Army fight their way to a tank factory in Ponyri and destroy a German panzer. Private Roland Roger and squad move up to reinforce paratroopers at Piano Lupo, also taking down 8 Panzer IV tanks, coordinating naval gunfire to destroy approaching Tiger tanks. July 12th, Sergeant James Doyle, along with Major Ingram, Hoover, Luyates, Denny, and Modich, destroy the lighthouse and battery guns on Sicily and disable German communications and equipment. The SAS takes a lot of losses in this time. Private Yuri Petrenko is transferred to the 2nd Guards Tank Division as they head to Prokhorovka. August 5th, Corporal Roland Roger and squad fight in the Battle of Troina. Private Delaney is KIA. August 22nd, Private Yuri Petrenko and the Red Army fight and defeat Wehrmacht forces in the heart of Kharkov. Private Yuri Petrenko and the Red Army assault the train yard in Kharkov while battling Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers. September 18th, Private Derek Warren and the 82nd Airborne recaptures Altavilla, Italy. October 3rd to 6th, Captain Carver Butcher takes part in Operation Devon with the 78th Infantry, leading to Butcher receiving serious injuries to his face via shrapnel. Over 30 people are lost. November 1st, US troops land in Bougainville. November 20th, Private Joe Miller and squad land on Betio Island in Tarawa Atoll. November 21st, Private Joe Miller with his squad take a Japanese airbase and assist the 8th Division to take and defend the Japanese HQ on Beto Island. This leads them to holding off tanks and counterattack. November date unknown. Lieutenant Wade Jackson and aviation mechanist's mate Mateo Hernandez's plane is shot down, and the two are captured by Imperial Japanese Navy and Imperial Japanese Army soldiers. They are rescued by the 93rd Infantry Division, who help them acquire an Imperial Japanese Navy Aiki D-3A to assist the division in reclaiming the island. December 12th, Robert Zussman enlists in the US Army. 1944, Ronald Red Daniels enlists in the US Army. June 5th, 23:30, Private Martin and Sergeant Heath drop near Saint-Mère-Église as pathfinders to help guide the rest of their unit to the drop zone. Heath's landing goes wrong and he is discovered and killed. Martin continues with the mission. June, unconfirmed date. Sergeant Arthur Kingsley takes part in Operation Tonga, where he and the Parachute Regiment help destroy the Melvin gun battery and several other bridges to assist Allied forces in invading Normandy. Kingsley befriends fellow paratrooper Sergeant Richard Webb, who would later become Kingsley's right-hand man. June 6th, 0012. Private Martin and the 101st Airborne Division assaulted Saint-Mère-Église minutes after landing, escaping from German forces by 12 minutes past 7 that morning. Sergeant Jack Evans and the 6th Airborne land near Pegasus Bridge and fight off German forces through the afternoon. This mission features Captain Price and John Davis from Call of Duty 2 during what appears to be their first mission outside the African campaign. Corporal Bill Taylor and the 2nd Rangers ascend the cliffs of Pont du Hoc. The 2nd Rangers find and disable coastal guns, then hold off German forces until they are reinforced the next morning. Private Martin and the 101st Airborne fight their way to Brecourt Manor and destroy a Flak 88 that has been bombarding Utah Beach. Corporal Roland Roger lands on Omaha Beach with the rest of the 1st Infantry Division, eliminating enemy mortar and artillery emplacements. Private David Ferguson and the 82nd Airborne attacks the Germans to get transport to Saint-Mère-Église. Private Jonathan Shepard and the 82nd Airborne gliders crash near Caratan. They regroup and take the town. Ronald Red Daniels lands on Omaha Beach with the rest of 1st Infantry. Red and Zussman are attacked and Zussman is stabbed and must be taken to the field hospital. The 1st Infantry must continue on to destroy a GPF cannon. June 7th, Corporal Bill Taylor and the 2nd Rangers successfully defend Point du Hoc and retreat to the trenches to hold off German forces while they wait for more support. June 12th, Sergeant John Davis and the 7th Armoured capture the crossroads of Ancteville, 17 miles east of Caen. June 14th, Sergeant John Davis and the 7th Armoured defend their position against German counterattack at Amer-sur-Seulles. June 15th, Private Joe Miller and squad land in Sepan Marina Islands. They face massive Japanese counterattack and establish a beachhead. June 25th, Private Joe Miller and 2 others scout the area around Mount Tapochau on Saipan Islands. July 14th, Corporal Bill Taylor and the 2nd Rangers fight to Beaumont Hague and successfully eliminate German mortar team. July 19th, Private Nichols helps the 25th Infantry capture Saint-Lô. July 22nd, Major Ingram, Corporal Keith, Sergeant James Doyle all land near Touchy, France, regrouping with a French resistance group, taking out Flak 88. July 25th, Operation Cobra begins. 1st Infantry supports Staff Sergeant Augustine Perez and the 745th Tanks to destroy German Junker-Jew 87s and Pak 38s, and later rescue Charlie Company in Caen. July 26th, Private Nichols and squad attacks and eliminates German positions in Saint-Germain. Ronald Red Daniels and the 1st Infantry advance into Marigny. Zussman and Ilo destroy the AA guns. The church they were using as cover is destroyed. Private Jones is killed during this operation. July 29th, American forces launch an attack on Mienne in order to disable a bridge that German forces are using for transportation. Sergeant McCullen's mental health degrades and is unresponsive to most communication. July 31st, Operation Cobra ends in Allied victory. August 1st, as part of Operation Totalize, Private Cole's unit attacks the German front lines and takes out an artillery battery while holding off German counterattack. August 5th, Private Nichols and squad cross the Mayenne River by boat to secure the bridge before its destruction. Sergeant Frank McCullen disarms the bomb but dies of his injuries. Corporal Dixon assumes post of sergeant. August 7th, Private Martin and the 101st Airborne assault the chateau and rescue Captain Price, who gave the 101st the information to rescue Major Ingram. August 8th, Private Bohater and unit move from Saint-Ignat de Clamsnil, destroying Tiger II tank commanded by the Black Baron. August 9th, Sergeant Doyle and the combined SAS French resistance team destroys a German fuel plant near Autun. Major Ingram is captured during the escape. August 11th, Private Nichols and squad move through Forêt du Couve and clear the way for the 2nd Battalion. August 14th, Private Cole and squad cross the Liaison River and take German positions, allowing Allied advance. August 18th, Private Nichols and squad capture the crossroads at Le Bourg Saint-Léonard. August 20th, Sergeant James Doyle and Corporal Keith, out alongside French resistance, rescue Major Ingram and 3 other Marquis prisoners. Isabelle Dufontaine is killed in action during the defense of the safe house. Ronald Red Daniels and his platoon meet with Arthur Crowley and Vivian, British SOE agents. This group is ordered by Colonel Davis to destroy a German armoured train. This is achieved by crashing a jeep into this train, and after they are joined by Camille Rousseau-Denis. Lieutenant Robichaud, Sergeant Callard and Private Cole rescue trapped Canadian tankers in a tavern in Saint-Lambert. Sergeant Callard is killed while setting off explosives and is put in for the Victoria Cross. Private Cole is promoted to corporal. Private Bohater and the tank crew hold back German attacks on Mount Ormel or Hill 262 until relieved by Canadian forces. Crewman Kowalski, Rudinsky and Private Baron are killed. Private Nichols and squad fight in Chambois to escape German forces at the Falaise Gap. Private Gouzeau is wounded and Sergeant Dixon is killed, saving Gouzeau. Private Gouzeau takes command of the squad and orders one final offensive against German forces trying to take the village. Chambois is secured by the Allies. August 25th. Camille Rousseau-Denis and Major Arthur Crowley disguise as Nazi officers to infiltrate the garrison in Paris. Rousseau kills Polizeführer Heinrich and exchanges her briefcase with Oberst Karl Fischers, which has stolen explosives inside. After Rousseau destroys the gates, the 1st Infantry Division and French resistance assault the garrison. The Allies successfully return Paris to the French. August 26th. US Army 4th Infantry Division and French Armed Forces 2nd Armoured Division arrive in Paris. September 2nd. Sergeant Jack Evans is sent on a sabotage mission to disable AA guns on and near Eder Dam. Sergeant Jack Evans, Waters and Captain Price make it to the nearest airfield, leading to Evans using a Flak Vierling 38 to destroy the attacking Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers. As well, Waters destroys a bridge. Sergeant Roland Roger, promoted after D-Day, fights off German forces with his squad in Maubeuge. September 4th, Sergeant Roland Roger joins Sergeant Glenn Hawkins and squad in a patrol of Mons in Belgium. The unit is ambushed and in their holdout for support are ordered to destroy Flag 88s. Sergeant Hawkins is injured and possibly killed in this mission. September 8th. The V2 rocket becomes the first artificial object to reach space. September 12th. The Battle of Aachen begins. September 14th. Sergeant Roland Roger, Sergeant Stephen Kelly, and Corporal John Jackson Smith destroy a series of German trenches on Crucifix Hill near Ehlendorf Ridge, Germany. September 15th. Private C. Miller lands with the rest of his squad on the island of Peleliu. Sergeant Sullivan is killed by a Japanese soldier. Corporal Roebuck is promoted to sergeant. Private C. Miller then takes the Japanese airfield as well as eliminates enemy mortar crews attacking American tanks. September 16th. Private C. Miller and his squad attack Japanese positions on The Point, eventually entering the cave network and eliminating heavy gun crews. September 17th. Allies follow General Montgomery's plan to launch major air and ground assaults. This begins Operation Market Garden to capture bridges across the Netherlands, clearing the way to the Rhine River. Flight Officer Paul Van Aerter and the 8th Air Force bombs Nijmegen in the Netherlands. Corporal Michael de Brouwer and the 1st Airborne Division fought their way to the bridge in Arnhem. September 18th, Private Martin and the 101st Airborne rescue Major Ingram from Dulag Ila in Austria. Corporal Michael de Brouwer and the 6th Airborne defend Arnhem Bridge. September 19th, Sergeant Gerald Miller and the 82nd Airborne assaults Nijmegen in the Netherlands and destroys Flak 88s at Hunner Park. The Battle of Hurtgen Forest begins. September 20th, Private Jason Westcott and the 82nd Airborne crosses the river in Nijmegen to secure the bridge. September 22nd, Operation Market Garden ends up being a failure with the final bridge crossing not being captured. October 16th, Corporal Alan Bradshaw and the Calgary Highlanders fight through Woensdrecht, Holland. October 18th, 1st Infantry attack the State Theatre in Aachen. Red Daniels and William Pearson request tank support from the 745th Tank Battalion. Staff Sergeant Augustine Perez, Rabson, Abrams and Poole advance into the streets. Rabson and his crew are killed by Panzer IV. The platoon are met and joined by civilians, including 2 known as Anna and Erica. During the evacuation, Erica is killed. October 21st, Sergeant Chuck Walker and squad take the city of Aachen, leading to the end of the Battle of Aachen. October 24th, Colonel Davis blames Joseph Turner and William Pearson for evacuation of civilians in Aachen as it was not part of the orders that he was given. October 27th, Sergeant Jack Evans and Captain Price successfully snuck into the battleship Tirpitz. Captain Price is killed in this mission, leaving Jack the only survivor of this mission. October 31st, Corporal Alan Bradshaw and the Calgary Highlanders begin an assault on the Walcheren Island in Holland. November 14th, 1st Infantry advance into the Hurtgen Forest and are ordered to destroy the hilltop artillery at Hill 493. Having taken a mill as a small-scale forward operating base, once the artillery is destroyed, the team are set upon by a Tiger II tank. In the destruction of the Tiger II, Lieutenant Joseph Turner is killed. November 15th, Reds Daniels is promoted to corporal. December 3rd, Carver Butcher launched Operation Vulcan, flying over Caldera Island along with Task Force Trident. December 6th, Corporal Bill Taylor and the 2nd Rangers make their way up Hill 400. December 7th, Corporal Bill Taylor and the 2nd Rangers make their way to the top of Hill 400 under fire from MG42s and mortars. December 8th, Corporal Bill Taylor and the remaining members of the 2nd Rangers hold off German forces with air support from P-51 Mustangs. Private Brayburn is killed in the process. December 16th, the Battle of Hurtgen Forest ends in German victory. NCO Marcus Howard is transferred from a segregated regiment and is transferred to the 16th Infantry Regiment as a corporal. The Battle of the Bulge begins. December 23rd, Lucas Gibson and the American 80th Infantry attack and secure the town of Ettelbruck, Luxembourg. December 25th, Gunnery Sergeant Alex McCall and a squad of tanks attack German panzers on the way to Bastogne. Red Daniels meets Corporal Howard and calls in air support, calling for the 2nd Lieutenant Matthew Weber and the 509th Fighter Squadron to protect their bomber squad that was incoming. William Pearson forces Daniels to call in air support on German tanks in the safe zone, almost getting the platoon wiped out. Red Daniels finds orders to plant explosives on the bridge in Remagen from a German prisoner who attempted to escape. December 26th, Corporal Riley and the 101st Airborne fend off waves of German soldiers and tanks at Bastogne. December 27th, 1st Infantry ambush a German convoy in the Ardennes forest. Robert Zussman is captured by German forces in the conflict. December 28th, Tom Sharp along with Sergeant Maddox, Private Taylor, Davies and Rogers destroy a German supply centre near Bastogne. Rogers is killed by a sniper. Zussman arrives in Bad Orb, Germany. He drops his dog tags to avoid execution or concentration camp due to him being Jewish. He is instead sent to a labour camp. 1945. Special Operations Task Force 001 Vanguard is formed and comprised of Lieutenant Arthur Kingsley, Lieutenant Paulina Petrova, Lieutenant Wade Jackson, 2nd Lieutenant Lucas Riggs, Sergeant Richard Webb, and Milos Novak to stop Project Phoenix under the command of Captain Carver Butcher. Just as a side note, Carver Butcher, being in Call of Duty World War II, Black Ops, Cold War and Vanguard, is making this more and more canon, but obviously we'll wrap a bit more up at this at the end. So in 1945, January 4th, Sergeant Maddox and Corporal Taylor rescues an injured Captain Randall. They safely drive him out of Bourg, France, using a captured Ork 1A. January 25th, Corporal Riley and the 101st Airborne Division rescue Allied prisoners and ambush an enemy convoy. January 9th, Sergeant Sam Rivers leads an attack that captures the town of Tillet, cutting off the German assault on Bastogne. January 13th, Corporal Riley and the 101st Airborne Division assault the town of Foy and destroy a Flak 88, also taking down a Tiger tank. January 15th, Private Martin and Captain Foley assaulted a German bunker complex to gather documents at a V2 launch site. Corporal Riley and the 101st Airborne Division defend Noville from incoming enemy tanks and half-tracks. January 17th, Junior Sergeant Alexei Ivanovich Voronin is promoted to the rank of Sergeant and reassigned to the 150th Rifle Division and sent to Poland, where he helps capture key German tank repair facilities in Warsaw. January 19th, Sergeant Roland Rogers' squad takes the town of Bulkotz and breaks through the Siegfried Line. Private Bloomfield is killed in the process. January 25th, the Battle of the Bulge ends in Allied victory. January 26th, Sergeant Alexei Ivanovich Voronin is transferred to the 2nd Guards Tank Army and uses a T-34 to secure the town near the Oder River, destroying Flak 88 guns and the Flak Panzer anti-aircraft gun. February 2nd, Sergeant Jack Evans and the 6th Airborne destroy a German V2 rocket base in Bergensteinfurt, Germany. February 7th, Lucas Gibson and the 80th Infantry destroy enemy resistance in the city of Braunau am Inn, Austria. February 26th, Corporal Todd Gessinger and the North Shore Regiment fought their way to Kepeln, Germany. March 3rd, Red Daniels earns an honourable discharge certificate and learns the truth of the Battle of Kasserine Pass from Colonel Davis. He dreams about returning home but refuses to leave without Robert Sussman. March 6th, William Pearson allows Red Daniels to stay in the platoon. March 7th, the Battle of Remagen begins. The 1st Infantry, 9th Armoured and 99th Infantry attack the bridge in Remagen. Corporal Howard successfully defuses most of the charges planted below the bridge and helps the Allies capture the bridge. After crossing the Rhine, the platoon went to camps to find Robert Zussman. March 24th. Corporal Bill Taylor and the 2nd Rangers reach Wallander, Germany and defeat German forces. Private Brian Preston and the 6th Airborne cross the Rhine into Hamminkeln, Germany. March 27th, the Battle of Remagen ends in Allied victory. April, date unknown. Task Force Vanguard hijacks a train to Hamburg, Germany in search of intel on Project Phoenix. Milos Novak is killed in this mission. April 3rd, Petty Officer Locke and his PBY Catalina attack a convoy of Japanese transport ships off Okinawa. They are flying back to the fleet when they come under fire from Japanese Zeros, rescuing sailors whose ships had been destroyed by the Japanese kamikazes. April 4th, Red's Daniels platoon discovers the lengths at which the Holocaust is going on when they reach a labour camp in Berger, Germany to find Zussman. Daniels discovers Metz is about to execute Zussman. Daniels kills Metz and helps Zussman escape. It seems important to note at this time that actually during the time that American forces found out what was happening during the Holocaust, anybody with a pink triangle, usually homosexual men, but anybody who was deemed a degenerate through homosexual acts or any kind of gender altercation of themselves, were then transferred by American soldiers to additional prison camps in Allied territories to serve out the rest of their life sentences. This is something that will not be covered by Call of Duty, and it seems actually something pretty important given how many people are fully aware of how Call of Duty is the time that they used gay as a slur or as a negative thing to call somebody, or actual homophobic slurs throughout their teenage years. So, unfortunately, this will go untouched. April 7th, Lieutenant Chuck Walker leads an attack to capture the bridge at Remagen. April 18th, Sergeant Alexei Ivanovich Voronin and the Red Army fight their way through to the Reichstag. In the process, Voronin eliminates multiple German soldiers, destroys Flak 88 guns, and destroys an enemy panzer. Voronin and his squad reach the Reichstag, where they raise the flag. Private Dmitry Petrenko is rescued by Sergeant Viktor Reznov and Private Chernov and participated in the attack on Silo Heights. Private Dmitry Petrenko later is given control of a T-34 tank and destroys enemy panzer tanks, as well as communications antenna, and reaches a train station. Petrenko, Reznov and Chernov board a train heading towards the outskirts of Berlin. April 23rd, Sergeant Reznov and Petrenko attacks the Berlin suburb of Pankow, Germany, and destroys the defending force, including in the asylum, and then reach Berlin. April 24th, Private Dmitry Petrenko and his squad continue the attack in Berlin and fight from building to building. Petrenko and his squad attack the Germans hiding in the metro under and drive them out. In a desperate move, the Germans flood the metro. April 28th, Tom Sharp and the 6th Airborne attack the German town of Wesel. They hold out until reinforcements arrive. April 30th, Private Petrenko and squad escape the flooded metro and reach the Reichstag, destroying Flak 88s, allowing tanks to progress. Private Chernov is burned and dies of his injuries. Petrenko and Reznov work at raising the Soviet flag at the top of the Reichstag. A small note here, so this must have been where the Nazis pushed back the first lot of Russian troops, because obviously we just mentioned that a couple of days ago. Call of Duty 1/2 was claiming that that was when that happened, which, you know, that means that all of the troops, the Russian troops from Call of Duty 1 are captured or dead at this time. Or I think of this as World at War's events are probably a bit more true, because historically this is the closest point to the actual historical timeline, which says the 2nd of May was when all of this finished up. May 2nd, Richard Webb is executed by Janek Richter. May 1st to May 8th, Project Phoenix is stopped by the Task Force Vanguard. Hermann Freisinger is killed by immolation. Hauptsturmführer Janek Richter is killed via a knife wound. Task Force Yeti is deployed to stop the forced strike by Carver Butcher. May 8th, Nazi Germany surrenders unconditionally to Allied powers. The European theatre comes to an end. Unknown date, Operation Paperclip is created and recruits former Nazi scientists for building rockets. May 14th, Private C. Miller and squad of Marine Raiders attack the Japanese defences on Wano Ridge, Okinawa. May 28th, Private Joe Miller and squad breaks through enemy defences at the Shuri line on Okinawa. May 29th, resupplied Private C. Miller and squad attack and capture Shuri Castle, the last main stronghold in Okinawa. Either Private Polonsky or Sergeant Roebuck are killed during this assault. Reports are unclear. May 30th, Colonel Davis gives a speech at the ceremony of a US garrison in the port of Le Havre, France. The platoon are disbanded and return to their own lives. Corporal Ronald Red Daniels gets a Bronze Star for his war efforts. June 13th, Ronald Red Daniels returns to Longview and reunites with Hazel Daniels and their son, Joseph Turner Daniels. August 6th, United States Army Air Force drops the Little Boy atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan, killing an estimate of 96,280 and injuring an estimated 155,230. August 9th, United States Army Air Force drops the Fat Man atomic bomb on Nagasaki and killed an estimated 100,080 and injured 86,070 people. August 15th, the Empire of Japan surrenders unconditionally to the Allied powers. September 2nd, World War II ends in Allied victory. Over 50 countries took part and over 65 million were killed. October 29th, Captain Reznov and Dmitry Petrenko are ordered by General Nikita Dragonovich as part of Operation Olympus to find Nazi scientist Friedrich Steiner at a German V-2 rocket base in the Arctic Circle. Steiner, once captured, leads General Dragovich to the ship containing the Nova 6 prototype. Wanting to see the weapon's effects, Dragovich has Petrenko and his team killed in the experiment. Reznov, Tvelin, and Nevsky escape when a British commando unit raids the ship. Tvelin is killed at some point during the combat, and Reznov is injured and recaptured. Reznov is returned to Russia and is imprisoned at Vorkuta. 1946, January 19th. The X-1 makes its first flight. 1947, March 12th. President Truman creates the Truman Doctrine, beginning the Cold War. October 1st, the F-86 Sabre makes its first flight and becomes the first subsonic jet. October 14th, Chuck Yeager becomes the first pilot to break the sound barrier. December 30th, the MiG-15 makes its first flight. 1948, February 4th, the D-5582 makes its first flight. 1949, April 4th, NATO is created. August 24th, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, including Greenland, Finland, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom and United States join NATO. 1950, unknown date. The US now officially recognizes the APU, or Armed Propaganda Unit, as the NVA, also known as the People's Army of Vietnam, or PAVN. Former OSS field operative Marshall Bryant becomes the recipient of the Intelligence Star. Eleazar Lazar Ulay's father accepts the position at the Tel Aviv School of Law and Economics, moving his family to Israel. July 25th, the Korean War begins. 1950 to 1953. Frank Woods, Alex Mason and Jason Hudson take part in the Korean War. 1952, February 18th. Greece and Turkey join NATO. 1953, unknown date. Alex Mason comes first in the Wimbledon Cup. July 27th, the Korean War ends with the signing of an armistice. November 20th, Scott Crossfield becomes the first pilot to reach Mach 2. 1955, unknown date. Jason Hudson is honorably discharged from the US Army's 101st Airborne. May 6th, West Germany joins NATO. May 14th, Albania, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland, Romania and the Soviet Union form the Warsaw Pact. November 1st, the Vietnam War begins. 1956 to 1957, date unknown. Alan Dutch Schaefer and Al Dillon serve in Vietnam. 1956, February 14th, the MiG-21 makes its first flight. December 26th, the BO106 makes its first flight. 1958, May 27th, the F-4 makes its first flight. July 29th, NASA is founded. 1959, unknown date, Nikita Dragovich persuades key members of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union to resort to another means of destruction instead of nuclear war in order to defeat the USA in the event of a global conflict. February 6th, the Titan I rocket makes its first flight. June 8th, the X-15 makes its first flight. August 12th, Ryan Jackson issues a program of covert action against the Castro regime to Colonel J.C. King. 1960, September 1st, Ryan Jackson sends Richard Nixon, Alan Dulles, Admiral Arleigh Burke, Livingston Merchant, Gordon Gray, and Colonel J.C. King a summary of Joseph Bowman's profile. September 5th, Ryan Jackson sends a summary of Frank Wood's profile to Richard Nixon, Alan Dulles, Admiral Arleigh Burke, Livingston Merchant, Gordon Gray, and Colonel J.C. King. September 6th, Ryan Jackson sends a summary of Alex Mason's profile to that same group. October 5th, Ryan Jackson sends a report under the subject name Excessive and Suspicious Eastern Bloc Commercial Freighter Traffic in Cuban Ports of Call to Richard Kane. November 9th, John F. Kennedy defeats Richard Nixon in the presidential election. Unknown date. The Soviet Union becomes the primary supplier of the NVA military. Earth's population reaches 3 billion. 1961, March 5th, Ryan Jackson sends a summary of Grigory Weaver's profile to Richard Kane. April 19th, Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin becomes the first human to reach space. The Vostok 1 becomes the first rocket to successfully reach space. April 17th, 0500. Alex Mason, Frank Woods, and Joseph Bowman meet with Carlos to discuss their part in the Bay of Pigs invasion. Later in the day, the three infiltrate Fidel Castro's mansion and assassinate him. During the escape, Mason leaves the escape plane to eliminate a roadblock and is captured by Lev Kravchenko and is brought before the real Castro and General Nikita Dragovich. November 9th, Robert White becomes the first pilot to reach Mach 6. November 24th, Ryan Jackson, in conjunction with OSADI, sends Alan Dulles a report regarding Operation Zapata and the recent detonation of the 57 Mount Soviet AN-602 hydrogen bomb. 1961 to 1963, Alex Mason is brainwashed by Frederick Steiner and General Nikita Dragovich. Mason is resistant to their attempts, and Dragovich labels the experiment a failure, sending Mason to the Gulag. During Mason's brainwashing, Viktor Reznov overwrites Dragovich's instructions with his own to kill Dragovich, Lev Kravchenko, and Steiner. 1962, January 8th. Ryan Jackson sends General Charles P. Campbell a general report of ex-Vorukta inmate Anthony Rizzo of the U.S. Air Force, also regarding the Vorukta Gulag. February 24th, Ryan Jackson sends Richard Kane a summary of Jason Hudson's profile. August 27th, the Mariner 2 is launched. October 16th to 27th, the Cuban Missile Crisis takes place. 1963, June 6th, Ryan Jackson sends a summary of Nikita Dragovich's profile to ADDO or SAO operatives. June 26th, Evelyn Cross sends President JFK a threatening letter on Central Intelligence Agency data systems. October 6th, 0600, Viktor Reznov and Alex Mason begin their escape from the Vorukta Gulag. Sacrificing most of their fellow inmates, Mason escapes, but Reznov is presumably killed. November 1st, Ryan Jackson sends a summary of Dmitry Petrenko's profile to Richard Kane. November 10th, 1700. Jason Hudson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara escort Alex Mason to the Pentagon. Inside, President Kennedy debriefs Alex Mason on eliminating General Nikita Dragovich. November 21st, John Trent sends JFK a final letter as a last warning. November 22nd, John F. Kennedy is assassinated in Dallas, Texas by Lee Harvey Oswald. Alex Mason is suggested to be involved. November 25th, John Trent sends Hudson a letter. Date unknown. Michael Myers is admitted to a psychiatric hospital for murdering his older sister, Judith Myers. Oliver North gains an appointment at the United States Naval Academy. 1964, January 24th. The SOG is born. 1965, September 1st. Ryan Jackson issues a proposal to William Colby for further added agency presence within the combat base in South Vietnam and an expansion of Air America efforts into Laos. September 17th, Hudson sends an email to Mason that features an interesting level of conversation. Mason, listen, it's been almost 2 years since Baikonur. Your fixation with Dragovich is bordering on obsessive. People are talking, and not the secretaries around the water cooler. You're poking in files way above your pay grade, and you're doing it real sloppy. Lucky you, you've got me watching your back. We all want a bullet in his head, and we will, but slow it down. This is a team effort, and that's the best and only way to get our hands on the psycho. You hear me? And while I'm on the subject, quit mumbling to yourself. You look like you're insane. J.H. 1966, January 2nd. John Rambo is drafted into the US military. February 2nd, Mason receives a letter from his father that highlights his mother's sickness. He will not respond. February 18th, Sarah Leary mentions Gregory Weaver at her date with Mason, highlighting his decline in mental state. I can't believe I let you talk me into drinks with that psycho Alex Mason all night. It was Dragovich this, Reznov that, step 1, step 2, step 3, like he was completely cuckoo. If I didn't know any better, I think this guy was a communist sympathizer or a complete schizo. He needs professional help, not a date. I appreciate you're trying to help out a friend, but don't do it at my expense. Thanks, Sarah. March 15th, Alex Mason receives another letter from his father that he will again not respond to. Son, this is the 10th letter I've sent without a response. Your mother has finally passed and you weren't there for her. I know what it is to be loyal and serve and bleed for your country, but this was your mother, and you failed her, failed your family. Services are in 5 days. If you're not here, don't ever come back. As far as me and your sisters are concerned, you died in that prison camp. 5 days. Signed, Dad. March 20th, Alex Mason receives a final letter from his father. March 20th, 1966. Alex, I gave you 5 days. You failed. You should have died in Varukta. Signed, your father. May, unknown date. John Rambo earned his airborne wings. June 6th, Ryan Jackson sends a report to Richard Kane regarding Viktor Reznov. August 1st, Daniel Clark plans his escape from Dragovich and Steiner and decides to travel to his brother's place in Johannesburg. September, unknown date. John Rambo is deployed in South Vietnam, where he will complete 2 tours. Unknown date. Russell Adler joins the CIA. 1967, January 6th. Ryan Jackson writes and sends letters regarding the Soviet military-industrial complex to Joseph Taub. April 14th. Ryan Jackson sends Richard Kane a summary of Daniel Clark's profile. The Steiner profile is dated. June 10th. The MiG-23 makes its first flight and becomes the first Soviet jet equipped with a look-down, shoot-down radar tech. August. Alex Mason and Michael Shaw are imprisoned in Cuba. A rescue team is sent to rescue the two, but are led to the wrong place by inaccurate intelligence reports. Shaw eventually escapes on his own and meets up with the team. Mason eventually escapes later. September 7th. Sergeant First Class William James Bennett is sent to clear out an area in Vietnam. November 9th. The Saturn V makes its first flight. Unknown date. Russell Adler is assigned to the MACV SOG unit in Vietnam to investigate covert Soviet activity. 1968, January 21st, Jason Hudson and Alex Mason meet with Frank Woods at a US Army base at Khe Sanh. Mason and Woods are to be deployed in Hue City, but they stay behind to assist in the defense of the base as the siege of Khe Sanh begins. January 23rd, Ryan Jackson sends William Colby a report regarding the People's Army of Vietnam. January 26th, Russell Adler and Lawrence Sims discover Perseus' involvement in Vietnam. Viet Cong soldiers orchestrated by Perseus attempt to steal an American-made nuclear bomb from a US firebase. Adler and Sims attempt to transfer a nuclear warhead from Firebase Ripcord to Camp Haskins before being shot down and left to deal with the Viet Cong. January 29th, Ryan Jackson sends Richard Kane a report regarding Soviet special forces in North Vietnam. July 31st, the Viet Cong attacks within the borders of South Vietnam despite the truce during a 2-day ceasefire in the honor of the Tết Nguyên Đán holiday. The NVA joins the assault within 24 hours in full force, and fighting spreads on a countrywide scale. February 2nd, 1900 hours, SOG X-Ray arrives at the besieged MAC-V compound in Hughes City to extract a Russian defector and his intel. Alex Mason believes the defector is Viktor Reznov. He does not know that Reznov is only a hallucination produced by his brainwashing. Mason, Frank Woods, and Joseph Bowman escape Hughes City. February 4th, Lev Kravchenko tests the Nova 6 gas on the local population of Vietnam and Laos. After this test, Kravchenko reports its effects and orders Soviet agents to report a success to Frederick Steiner. February 9th, 1700 hours. Jason Hudson and Gregory Weaver track down Dr. Daniel Clark in Kowloon, Hong Kong, and torture him for information. Clark reveals that he is affiliated with Project Nova. A Russian Spetsnaz team tracks them down, forcing a running gunfight. Clark is killed before the team is extracted, and right before he can tell Hudson the significance of the numbers. Alex Mason and Frank Woods are shot down near the DMZ and flee their downed helicopter. They swim upriver and meet with Bowman. The three eliminate Viet Cong outposts. Mason enters a rat tunnel to find Lev Kravchenko's base and intel on the Nova 6 experiments. Mason survives being buried alive when the base's rigged explosives detonate. February 11th, a Russian plane carrying Nova 6 is downed over Laos, and Alex Mason and his team are sent to find it and get intel. Riding upriver in a PBR, the team supports local American forces. The team lands on shore and fights both NVA and Spetsnaz forces. Finding the plane, the team hold up until Russian helicopters incapacitate the team and General Nikita Dragovich captures them. February 16th, Hudson, Weaver, Brooks and Harris are briefed by Richard Kane at 1400 hours and are sent into the Soviet Union to locate Mount Yamantau. February 18th, Jason Hudson and Gregory Weaver lead a team made up of themselves, Terrence Brooks and Bruce Harris to infiltrate Mount Yamantau and to gain intel on Project Nova. Harris is assumed dead during this mission. February 19th, 1100 hours. Alex Mason and Frank Woods escape captivity from the Viet Cong, but Joseph Bowman is killed before they can escape. The pair steal a Russian Mi-24 Hind, fire upon the Ho Chi Minh Trail on their way to Lev Kravchenko's compound. Inside they free American POWs, including Viktor Reznov. Lev Kravchenko is presumed KIA, while reason for doubt has been cast on the death of Frank Woods. February 19th to 22nd, Frank Woods is captured and transferred to the Hanoi Hilton. February 22nd, Jason Hudson sends Weaver the following message via the CIA data system regarding Mason. Greg, I understand your concerns, but he's one of ours. Whatever happened to him is not his fault, and it's our duty to bring him back and use whatever knowledge he has to bring Dragovich down. I don't care if he wears his grandma's underwear, calls himself God, drools on himself. We're going to get the info we need, and then we're going to see that he gets some help. You don't like it? Too bad. That's how it's gonna play. JH. Ryan Jackson sends Richard Kane a report providing background on the origins of Nova 6. February 23rd, the USMC and the South Vietnamese Black Panther Company secure the Hue Citadel. Alex Mason goes rogue and infiltrates Rebirth Island in order to kill Frederick Steiner. He believes that he is accompanied by Viktor Reznov and stands aside as Reznov executes Steiner. Hudson and Weaver lead a team to the Nova 6 facility on Rebirth Island in the Aral Sea. Upon infiltrating, they receive a panic distress call from Steiner and find him just in time to watch Mason declare, "My name is Viktor Reznov, and I will have my revenge," and shoots Steiner. Mason wounds Weaver before Hudson incapacitates him. After February 23rd, Kuzmin was captured and interrogated by the CIA. Russell Adler interrogated him and got Kuzmin's name and rank. Kuzmin was sent to the Petropavlovsk Gulag. February 24th. Bruce Harris is still alive after falling off the catwalk at Mount Yamato and is found and captured by the Soviets. February 25th. After hours of fierce interrogation, Alex Mason finally breaks down. Jason Hudson realizes Mason has been brainwashed into being a Soviet sleeper agent by General Nikita Dragovich, and his programming has been sabotaged by Viktor Reznov in Vorkuta. Mason reveals that the broadcast station Dragovich is using to contact other sleeper agents in the USA is called Ruslaka and was last seen docked in Cuba. February 26th, Alex Mason, Jason Hudson, Grigory Weaver all launch an all-out assault on the Rusalka, crippling the vessel. Assault teams find the actual station is below the ship, on the sea floor. Mason confronts Dragovich one last time, then strangles and drowns him to death. Post February 26th, Alex Mason, Jason Hudson and Grigory Weaver flee to South Africa. They supposedly live there undisturbed until 1978. September 13th, Albania withdraw from the Warsaw Pact. September 2nd, Ryan Jackson sends a report to William Colby regarding the confirmation of mass slaughter during the NVA occupation of Q City, January 31st to February 24th, 1968, during the Tet Offensive. 1969, March 3rd, the Top Gun program is established after radar-guided missiles become difficult to maneuver from. July 24th, Neil Armstrong becomes the first human to land on the moon. Apollo 11 becomes the first spacecraft to land on the moon. September, date unknown. John Rambo is trained as a Green Beret. John Rambo is deployed again in Vietnam. 1970, December 21st, the F-14 makes its first flight. 1971, November 4th, John Rambo joins a guerrilla mission behind enemy lines. Rambo is injured and taken as a POW. 1971, May 1st, the SOG is disbanded, effectively ending its operations in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. A similar but smaller operations group called the Strategic Technical Directorate Assistance Team 158, or ST-158, is established to take its place, but it does not last. December 23rd, there is an earthquake in Managua, Nicaragua, leaving 5,000 dead. Date unknown. Frank Woods is the sole remaining prisoner of the Da Nang POW camp and engineered an escape to get back to the US safely. He later returned to work with the CIA. 1973, June 19th, an American sets a warehouse on fire for $11,000 of life insurance money, with Raul and Josefina Mendez still inside. They escape, but Josefina is left badly burned. Unknown date. Raul Mendez kills a group of dogs to obtain medical supplies for his sister Josefina. An active conflict that continues to present day begins in Sierra Leone, killing upwards of 213 people. Monarch sends their first expedition to Skull Island, led by Bill Randa and Lieutenant Colonel Packard, featuring Mason, Weaver and James Conrad. 1974. Unknown date. David Howell Petrius joins the US military. 1975, April 29th. Frank Woods destroys an agency cipher machine called the Parable Machines, so the North Vietnamese cannot get support from the Kremlin. April 30th, the Vietnam War ends with a communist takeover of South Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos. During this time, I would like to take a moment to talk about Project 100,000. This was a significantly terrible use of the United States Department of Defense's planning. It was put forward by Defense Secretary Robert McNamara in 1966. It was basically to put more and more disabled people into the armed forces, mainly because the United States were losing too many men in Vietnam. This would lead to them having a 10 times more likely casualty rate. People know them through their stories of having to help these soldiers tie their shoes. It was more of a danger for the entire troop to help them. They should not have been there. They would have failed the mental and medical statutes for serving in the armed forces before this time. This is another thing where the United States have used people basically to just push their imperialism, and the fact that this series is not talking about it is in a serious vein of propaganda and hides the history of people who were oppressed by the people it wants to talk about as the heroes. Another thing I would like to say is there is a book on it. I will be putting a link to the book in the description, so please do have a look for that. It would be brilliant for us to talk about it, read about it, learn about the things that these people went through, mainly just to keep America afloat at a time when it didn't deserve to. On top of our previous section, we need to discuss the Vietnam War as a whole and the actions taken by the US military just throughout the entire conflict. And mainly when you talk about the Vietnam War, you have to remember the war crimes and the weapons created, which are now deemed war crime weapons. During this, one of the main things to think of would be napalm, but also you immediately think of the My Lai massacre. The My Lai massacre is one of the US military's worst actions that has ever come to light, and I will be reading segments of what has been reported on it. This took place on the 16th of March 1968 at 7:30 a.m. Around 100 soldiers from Charlie Company just murdered a load of civilians, and I will read some quotes. This is from Private First Class Michael Bernhardt. I walked up and saw these guys doing strange things, setting fire to the hooches and huts and waiting for people to come out and then shooting them, going into the hooches and shooting them up, gathering people in groups and shooting them. As I walked in, you could see piles of people all through the village, all over. They were gathered up into large groups. I saw them shoot an M79 grenade launcher into a group of people who were still alive, but it was mostly done with a machine gun. We were shooting women and children just like anybody else. We met no resistance, and I only saw 3 captured weapons. We had no casualties. It was just like any other Vietnamese village. Old Papa Sans, women and kids. As a matter of fact, I don't remember seeing one military-age male in the entire place, dead or alive. Army photographer Sergeant Ronald Haleber's eyewitness also states, there were some South Vietnamese people, maybe 15 of them, women and children included, walking on a dirt road maybe 100 yards away. All of a sudden, the GIs just opened up with M16s. Beside the M16 fire, they were shooting at people with an M79 grenade launcher. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It is thought to have begun with a soldier stabbing a civilian from this situation with a bayonet, and then pushing another civilian into a well and throwing a grenade into that well. I will be featuring on screen the names of the participants from the My Lai massacre, but I will also be obviously showing photographs and talking about these things. Also, I will be featuring a photograph of what the most visceral depiction of what napalm has done, and just showing what it did and the effect it had on children, and the fact that this was an incendiary weapon that would cling to human flesh and not be able to leave because it was an adhesive. The My Lai massacre as well was an incident that is described as a massacre, a war rape, and torture. There were mass graves, there was everything. I honestly have to say that personally I want to thank Ronald L. Haberl, the photographer that I mentioned earlier, who had his statement released, because without his photography, without his work, we would not be able to acknowledge the between 347 and 504 unarmed people that were killed by the US Army soldiers. This is atrocious. The thing is that I will be mentioning about napalm and stuff later on, but the actions that take part here are not condemned by Call of Duty. They're not even mentioned, which is something that these types of people want. They do not want you to acknowledge that these things happened, because then you question whether or not the military is good. But instead, there are reports of things that happened by these soldiers where women were gang raped, their bodies were mutilated, and some people were raped who were as young as 12. This is horrible to read. Reading about it is awful, but you should read things about the Vietnam War. You should read about what these things did, because it's important. It is a thing that on Wikipedia has a section that is just mass killings during the Vietnam War. This was not a time for anybody to think this would be a fun time to do shooty shooty bang bang. There is a whole lot of messed up stuff in here, and honestly, the more you can read about it, the more I recommend it, mainly because this war existed solely to say that Vietnam was not allowed to elect somebody who was communist, who had left-wing sympathies, and at the time you were having incredibly right-wing thinkers. I mean, JFK was the most left-wing, and he accelerated this war. It is a continually awful thing, and it was because these people wanted somebody who was left of hunting the poor for sport and saying that America can do what it wants. So yeah, this is important, and honestly is something that we need to continually talk about, especially because basically this game and Black Ops 2's introduction is just propaganda about this type of thing. It's just saying that this was a good action by good people, and well, it wasn't. Also, if there were any doubts that this video wasn't getting monetized, what I've just talked about would probably do it. Just so you know as well, just as a final little point, there is the introduction of the start of the Cambodian genocide was part of what happened in the Vietnam War. The beginning of a genocide happened here. This was not a good action. These politicians in America were just trying to perpetuate the imperialist war machine, and we're still doing it. So yeah, read, please. 1976, unknown date. Operation Active Measures takes place. Alex Mason is sent to East Berlin to gather intel and to interrogate Mikhail Belov. 1977, date unknown. John McClane joins the NYPD. Frank Woods infiltrates Mount Yamantau and kills Schlussel, who was trying to revive Project Nova. Frank Woods is sent to Mount Elbrus in Russia to stop a Soviet ICBM test launch. Kaori Tanaka joins Perseus. August 20th, the Voyager 2 is launched. September 5th, the Voyager 1 is launched. November 19th, X sends a letter to Weaver telling him that his sister Olga survived Stalin's purge but died in childbirth, and that Weaver now has a niece named Christina in Moscow. November 27th, Ryan Jackson sends Weaver a letter regarding his niece Christina Raskova, but apologizes that he cannot help him locate her whereabouts. He, however, says that he can forward this information to his direct report, which may then decide an appropriate means of action. 1978, October 30th. The CIA and MI6 supposedly execute Operation Charybdis to neutralize Alex Mason, Jason Hudson, and Gregory Weaver after all three fled to South Africa. CIA analyst Ryan Jackson is an advisor. MI6 provides an SAS operator named Jonathan, last name redacted. Gregory Weaver's niece, Christina, is supposed to play a major role in this operation, seducing Mason. Operation Charybdis is not successful. Michael Myers escapes from Smith's Grove Psychiatric Hospital and returns to Haddonfield, performing acts that are referred to as the 1978 murders. Date unknown, post-October 30th. Michael Myers is captured by the Haddonfield Police Department outside his old family home. 1979, July 19th, a CIA false flag operation rescues US National Guards from Managua as Sandinista forces enter the country, but a deep cover operative is captured. After July 19th, Alex Mason rescues the deep cover operative. December 24th, the Soviet war in Afghanistan begins. A high-value individual is captured outside of Kabul. After December 27th, Alex Mason rescues the high-value individual. Codename Nikolai takes part in the Soviet-Afghan War. 1980. November, SEAL Team 6 is created. 1981, January 8th, Alex Mason receives an unexpected phone call from Jason Hudson, who wants to get the old team back together. Alex Mason is told to immediately report to Amsterdam to rendezvous with Frank Woods and Russell Adler if he wants to return as a CIA operative. January 13th, Alex Mason, Frank Woods and Russell Adler capture Qasim Javadi in Amsterdam. Javadi reveals Arash Kadavir is in Trabzon's airfield in Turkey. 13 hours later, Alex Mason, Frank Woods and Russell Adler kill Arash Kadavir in Trabzon's airfield. Russell Adler recovers a wounded Bell. January 17th, Jason Hudson contacts Russell Adler to form an elite team of operatives in pursuit of a dangerous Soviet agent. January 18th, Jason Hudson briefs the US President Ronald Reagan on an immediate threat of attack after the US acquired intelligence that after 13 years, Perseus is planning an attack on the West. February 24th, Bell, Adler, Park and Lazar enter East Berlin to capture Anton Volkov. February 27th, Bell and Woods infiltrate a secret Soviet installation in the Ukrainian USSR, uncovering a secret training ground where Spetsnaz are trained to fight in American cities. Bell and Woods discover that the missing nuclear bomb is American, part of Operation Greenlight. Hudson tells them that as part of Operation Greenlight, the United States planted nuclear bombs across Europe as a countermeasure against possible Soviet invasion. Side note here, these had been placed back in 1958. They had been sitting like nuclear landmines in Eastern European nations for 23 years, with only America's knowledge and consent, which makes it dubious if not a war crime. March 3rd, Mason and Woods return to Mount Yamantau with the help of Belikov after an insider within the KGB confirmed an ongoing operation at the site. March 9th, Bell and Adler infiltrate the KGB headquarters in Moscow with the help of Belikov. March 13th, Bell, Adler and their team entered Havana, Cuba to track Hastings and Perseus. While waiting for Skyhook, Bell rescued Park and abandoned Lazar. Lazar dies in this mission. March 14th, Adler injects psychotropic drugs into Bell and lets Bell recall the false memory in Vietnam in July 1986. Bell told the CIA team that Perseus was at Slovetsky Monastery. March 15th, a naval task force headed to the Slovetsky Islands and successfully prevented Perseus from launching the Greenlight bombs in Europe by destroying the radar array. Adler and Bell have a shootout. Bell's condition is unknown, but Adler survived. April 10th, the Geneva Convention on Conventional Weapons is signed into effect. There are 125 parties privy to this agreement and are to uphold it. This will be important throughout. April 12th, the STS-1 is launched. 1982, May 21st, Jose Luis Mendez is assassinated by a CIA operative, leaving his son Raul Mendez to take over the Mendez cartel. May 30th, Spain joins NATO. Date unknown. John McClane is promoted to detective in the NYPD. 1983, unknown date. Perseus leader passes away due to cancer. November 9th, during Able Archer 83, Perseus attacked an American military facility in Cheyenne Mountains and attempted to launch nuclear missiles. Although Perseus failed, the relationship between the US and Soviet Union became worse. 1984, January 20th, a Perseus-aligned strike team led by Viktor Stitch Kuzmin attacked a CIA safe house in West Berlin. This operation left planted evidence for Russell Adler to lure him into a trap at the Pines Mall, utilizing the possible presence of chemical weapon Nova 6. January 21st, Adler with Frank Woods, Xenia Oso and Wired Bulldozer Jones assault the Pines, locating several barrels leaking of a substance that looks similar to Nova 6. Adler is captured by Vikor. April 19th, Carla Rivers attempts an assault on a camp and is met with extreme resistance, requiring the intervention of a team led by Frank Woods and Terrell Wolf. July 2nd, a Soviet military base in Yamantau Mountains is infiltrated and nuked by Perseus operatives. June 10th, Adler is rescued from Verdansk. June 26th, Jackal Mabuza and a small crew hijack the Jumpseat satellite ground station in South Africa. Jumpseat Constellation satellites crash in Verdansk and Algeria. June 27th, Adler's team secured the satellite crash site in the Adrar province, Algeria. Adler retrieves the data recorder and lies about its survival from atmosphere. July 23rd, Kaori Kitsune Tanaka hijacked a broadcast at the Echelon NATO listening station in Teufelsberg and killed several NATO members. Woods and his squad arrive at the station. The broadcast affects one operator, causing him to defect and kill others in the squad. Katsune escapes. Woods kills the defector. After July 23rd, Hudson and Woods meet in private, discussing the missing data recorder from the Jump Seat constellation satellite that landed in Algeria. They realise Adler has been compromised, and after discussing Adler working on a secret project in Verdansk off the grid, Hudson orders Woods to have Mason bring Adler in. July 30th, Adler was taken to Room 9 of the National Security Agency facility for questioning. August 2nd, Vicor, Stitch, Kuzmin, and Benito Fuse Ortega tried to dismantle several seismic charges planted by Adler in a German World War II bunker in Verdansk. Explosives detonate, destroying Tavorsk district, Verdansk. Mason enters Room 9 and removes Adler's brainwashing by Stitch. August 19th, Stitch is confronted by Adler at the grave of Perseus in Verdansk. Stitch is killed by Adler. August 24th, Carver Butcher leads Mason, Adler, Hudson and Woods into a World War II bunker in Verdansk and reveals his work over the years of hunting leftover Nazi forces. Unknown date. The Vidanoy ship leaves Rebirth Island transporting Nova 6 gas and disappears. Here at the end of 1985, I would like to discuss the actions and weapons used, but also the locations they take place in over the titles of Black Ops 1 and Black Ops Cold War, namely the multiplayer aspects of these games. Throughout the two games, a number of weapons are signed off on and with regular use that cannot be in accordance with the Geneva Convention standards, and although canonically we may not be able to say that there is an issue, I want to talk about the tone used in these games regarding it. With the use of the RC-XD, a small remote-controlled bomb, mainly exploding at the maximum height of a human shin, we can say that a lot of damage here is not in order to kill, but mainly severely injure. This is similar to the Bouncing Betty. Another problem is the weapon of a flamethrower added in Cold War. This is due to the fact that 1, it is noted that factually burning to death is the most horrible way and painful way to die, and 2, that this is earned as a reward and is shown to be fun and should be celebrated as such. Both of these stances create an in-game weapon that makes the tone of multiplayer very hard to handle. This can also be said for napalm strikes that can be called in by any participant in the field. Napalm's effects are one of the most horrific things to come from humanity's creativity for pain and misery. Its effects are that of having a viscous liquid that cannot be removed from flesh that ignites and burns through. Effectively having the effects of a flamethrower, but no water can help you, and you can't dodge it. It sticks to you and it follows you. Black Ops Cold War also allows any player on the field to launch a nuclear device. This would be a horrific act of unnecessary violence that the game puts to the player as a fun reward for any to take part in, but also completely destroys the premise of the game. The Cold War was called that because it was a nuclear standoff. If this thing added to a game because it was fun to watch the mushroom cloud was to have taken place at the actual time, the globe would have been decimated by nuclear fire and it would all be over. None of these points about the killstreaks alone have covered the fact that the use of artillery, strafe runs, airstrikes, and so many others used in high civilian populations such as Miami, Moscow, Alpine, The Pines, Raid, Express, Sanatorium, Game Show, KGB, U-Bahn, Golova, Diesel, Standoff, Collateral, Rush, Zoo, Amsterdam, Slums, Drive-In, America, Globoko, Crisis, Cracked, Havana, Berlin Wall, Kowloon, Stadium, Convoy, Hotel, and Hazard. Not to mention the consequences of these actions on maps like ICBM, Radiation, Launch, Silo, and Apocalypse, all of which contain something very temperamental that should not be flagged from the air. I also wish to start a conversation at this point about the arcadification, I suppose, of the Mendez mission from Call of Duty Black Ops 2. This is seen in a Cold War map, Cartel, and in which an awful act of US military aggression that in Black Ops 2 you witness, you experience trying to save people to get home, yet here is that location as a multiplayer map where you get to find a corpse in the bed. It just shows how little Activision want this franchise to talk about anything other than, isn't war so cool? Listen to the cool gun sounds we have. Anyway, side note over, back to the timeline.
1986.
April 26th, the Chernobyl disaster occurs. Pre-July 2nd, Frank Woods is captured, interrogated and tortured by Raul Mendez in Angola. July 2nd, Alex Mason assists Jason Savimbi and UNITAR in a counterattack against an MPLA charge. Alex Mason and Jason Hudson are sent to rescue Frank Woods from Angola. Alex Mason attempts to kill Raul Mendez but only wounds him, fueling Mendez's revenge. September 5th, Woods, Mason and Hudson are sent to Afghanistan to assist the Mujahideen. Woods and Mason meet Tian Zhao. Woods and Mason capture Kravchenko and interrogate him, revealing information that there is a mole in the CIA. The Mujahideen betray Woods, Mason, Hudson and Zhao, leaving them for dead in the desert. They are rescued by an unknown ally who Mason believes to be Reznov. I'm going to put a small side note here. I don't actually know how accurate this would be to the actual events, but given the fact that the Mujahideen and later the Taliban that was supported by the US interests in Afghanistan just not falling to the Soviets, this kind of tone strikes more of a post 9/11 fear of those from Arabic nations rather than something that actually feels tangible to the storyline. Maybe just to build up a level of drama, or could be to do with talking about how you can't trust people from Arabic countries, as a lot of the content from the Call of Duty franchise will reach throughout following what would be the in-game events of 9/11, and also obviously following their writing standards following 9/11, the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. September 25th. Manuel Noriega and the PDF assist Mason, Hudson and Woods in a mission to find and capture Raul Mendez in his home in Nicaragua. Mendez is briefly captured by the PDF, but is then released by Noriega. Josefina Mendez is killed by a grenade thrown by Woods, and Raul is injured and assumed dead. 1987, date unknown. SEAL Team 6 is dissolved and replaced by the United States Naval Special Warfare Development Group, or DEV Group. Al Dillon and his squad of CIA operatives are hunted by a Yakuza, leaving only one survivor, Alan Dutch Schaefer. 1988, December 24th. John McClane survives the Nakatomi Plaza attack. Hans Gruber allows himself to fall from the top office instead of going to prison. 1988 to 1990, unknown date. John McClane and his wife Holly work to rebuild their relationship from its estranged state, and she starts using his surname again. 1989, February 15th, Soviet war in Afghanistan ends with the withdrawal of Soviet troops. December 20th, Operation Just Cause commences. Woods and Mason find and capture Noriega in Panama. Hudson orders Woods to assassinate Nexus target, believing it to be Raul Mendez. This is discovered to be Mason. Noriega escapes. Mendez cripples Woods and executes Hudson. Post-November 9th, Bruce Harris is freed from Soviet captivity. 1990, January 8th. Ryan Jackson is at the office of the Inspector General speaking on his career. January 12th. The search for Alex Mason, Frank Woods and Jason Hudson is closed, ending Operation Charybdis. August 2nd. The Gulf War begins. December 24th. John McClane confronts the terrorist attack at Dual International Airport near Washington, D.C. A plane crashes due to the terror attacks at Dual Airport, leading to the deaths of over 230 passengers. 1991. Date unknown. Conflict in Kosovo that continues until 1996 leaves 6,000 casualties. February 28th. The Gulf War ends in a coalition victory. July 1st, the Warsaw Pact is disbanded. December 26th, the Soviet Union collapses, becoming Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and the fictional nation of Kastovia. Kastovia has its capital as Verdansk, but also features cities of Venskaya, Tavosk, and St. Petrograd. 1992, April 15th. Calvin Cordazar Broadus Jr., aka Snoop Dogg's debut breakout, starts with the release of the film Deep Cover. 1994, unknown date. A conflict in Rwanda leaves 800,000 to 1 million dead. April 20th, CSTO is formed. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan become members. December, Imran Zakhaev has emergency heart bypass surgery and remains in the hospital. 1995, summer. John McClane confronts Simon Gruber, brother of Hans Gruber, as he plants bombs throughout New York City and tries to rob the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Date unknown. Monarch sends another crew to Skull Island and tries to understand the creature the first team saw years ago. 1996, unknown date. The British government orders an assassination of Imran Zakhaev. This is the first assassination issued by the British government since World War II. David Section Mason graduates the US Naval Academy. December 27th, the Taliban capture Kabul, triggering the Afghanistan Civil War. Winter, Major General Macmillan and Lieutenant John Price infiltrate Pripyat, Ukraine, aiming to assassinate Imran Zakhaev. Zakhaev has his left arm severed, but escapes with Vladimir Makarov and Yuri. Major General Macmillan is wounded, but escapes with Lieutenant Price. 1997, July 4th. The Sojourner lands on Mars. Unknown date. Alejandro Rojas becomes a freelance arms dealer and involves himself with terrorist organizations. 1998, November 20th. The ISS is launched. 1999, January 2nd. Ryan Jackson writes the reports of CIA missions undertaken by Alex Mason, Frank Woods, and Jason Hudson, including the assassination of Jose Luis Menendez. March 12th, Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland join NATO. March date unknown. Avenged Sevenfold forms, consisting of Matt Sanders, James Sullivan, and Matt Wendt. April 2nd, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Uzbekistan withdraw from the CSTO. Unknown date. Rogue Russian general Roman Barkov invades Urzikstan, the fictional nation, which leads to the deaths of many and the capture of Farah and Hadir Karim. Some of those killed in this incident include Walid Karim, Fatima Karim, Shadi, J12, Andrei, and Luka. During this incident, you see a number of war crimes being done by those under Barkov, included but not limited to the breaking of Article 51 and 54 of the Geneva Convention, such as the act of total war, which does not distinguish between civilian and military targets, leading to execution of civilians, bombing non-combatants, and the usage of non-conventional weapons attacks that cannot be limited in their destruction in the case of a chemical weapon attack. Also, this breaks Article 35, the breaking of Articles 76, 77, 15 and 79, which are allowed special protection to women and children, as well as civilian medical personnel, are also taken part here. 2000, unknown date. Godzilla attacks Kong and proves his protection by Skull Island, bringing about the events of Godzilla vs. Kong. 2001, September 11th. The World Trade Center is destroyed, leaving 2,996 dead. Tommy Kraken Briggs flew one of the jets when Secretary Rumsfeld ordered DEFCON 3. September 17th. Wayne Davis joins the US Army. Unknown date. Vladimir Makarov bombs a Moscow city bus. 29 are killed and 19 are injured. Makarov bombs Piccadilly Circus using London Underground train. 407 are killed. This is similar to the 7/7 bombings that occurred in our real world. Makarov massacres a GUM mall in Moscow. 87 are killed. 2002, unknown date. Makarov hijacks a Greek oil tanker in the Mediterranean Sea. 2 Greek naval members are killed before the $3 million ransom is paid. Makarov kills 3 Russian infantry soldiers. June, Wayne Davis is deployed in Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. 2003, January 26th. The Jimmy Kimmel's Live show premieres on ABC. This would continue to run in-universe until 2025 at least. March 20th, the Iraq War begins. March 31st, Thomas Merrick completes the US Navy SEAL training at the age of 17, the youngest recruit to do so. Unknown date. Makarov represses North Caucasus-based pro-Western nationalist groups, commits assassinations of political leaders, arson and bombing of opposition parties. Makarov murders Moscow-based journalist Ilya Lovich. Makarov bombs several high government buildings in Kazakhstan, killing 245 people. Makarov hijacks 2 airliner planes, leaving 378 people dead, including 8 of his own henchmen. 2004, January 4th, the first of 2 exploration rovers, known as Spirit, lands on Mars. January 10th, the second of the 2 exploration rovers, known as Opportunity, lands on Mars. Date unknown. Makarov robs an HBS bank in Istanbul. Makarov kidnaps 15 Russian college students and murders 5 of them. Makarov bombs 2 American embassies, leaving 28 dead and 48 injured. Wayne Davis is deployed to Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom and takes part in the first and second battles for Fallujah. Hans Golem Blaustein joins the Bundeswehr. March 29th, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia and Slovenia join NATO. 2005, date unknown. The Tel Aviv War, as seen here, ravages the Middle East, disrupted oil supplies, triggering a global energy crisis. Operation Sand Viper commences that cements the legend of the Ghost Task Force after a 60-man team is cut down to 15 men, who emerged from hiding amongst their allies' corpses to surprise counterattack. Makarov raids an unknown number of Boolean trucks in Moscow and steals 3 million rubles and kills 3 security guards. Makarov hijacks an unknown number of cruise ships in the Baltic Sea, tortures 3 US passengers until $5 million ransom is paid. Charlotte Charlie Johnson joins the British Armed Forces. Maxim Minotaur Bale and Dmitry Bale joined the Spetsnaz and served in Spetsgruppe A, Alpha Group. 2006, date unknown. Makarov robs the Russian state postal and banking depot of 32 million rubles. Makarov murders famous British designer Rob Millington. Makarov murders 3 US airmen in Turkmenistan. Makarov assists in coordinating attacks made against the Sudanese military and Janjaweed militia against rebels. This action is then implicated in human rights abuses. Jacob Thorne joins the Royal Air Force. Damian Raines joins the US Marine Corps. June 23rd, Uzbekistan joins CSTO. 2007, late June to July 4th. John McClane has to find a hacker named Pharrell after a series of hackers have been assassinated. Thomas Gabriel activates what will be known as the New York fire sale event. Gabriel's associate Mai is killed in an elevator shaft by dropping a car on her. Thomas Gabriel and his associates are killed by John McClane. Unknown date. Makarov captures and dismembers the Mossad attaché representing Ukraine because he was responsible for investigating Makarov's links to Islamic extremists. Makarov assassinates Pakistani politician Hassani al-Burra. Damian Raines served as a marine radio operator in the Iraq War. Azur el-Sarraf becomes an arms dealer, dealing in Alexandria, and becomes active across North Africa. 2008, date unknown. Makarov bombs a Swedish furniture store in a shopping mall located in St. Petersburg, killing 100 people. Makarov ambushes an FSB vehicle and kills 5 agents. Makarov abducts and murders Sibgar's owner's wife and daughter. Kate Laswell is called upon by the CIA to supervise an SAD black site program. 2009, unknown date. Makarov bombs a US oil company in Baku, killing 3 people. Farah Karim leads an escape from Tobruk prison camp, fighting alongside Lieutenant John Price's SAS unit. Dominic Tam is trained to represent France in the Summer Olympics in track and field. Makarov attempts to bomb an English-speaking school in Moscow but fails. Dmitry Bale and Maxim Minotaur Bale were besieged at the Kurbanov Hospital. Alexia Alice Valenzuela joined the US Army. Makarov rigs explosives in a Moscow soccer stadium. Makarov is denied publicity when authorities burst a pipe to prevent the match. Wayne Davis was redeployed in Afghanistan as part of the troop surge. Sydney Sid joins the US Army. Makarov receives over $2,100,100 worth of weapons, drugs and people. April 1st, Albania and Croatia join NATO. 2009 to January 1st, 2011. Date unknown. Russian ultranationalist party was formed, led by Imran Zakhaev. The Second Russian Civil War breaks out between Russian government loyalists and the ultranationalist rebels. Al-Fulani is elected president in Saudi Arabia. 2010, date unknown. Farah Karim founded the Urzikstan Liberation Force. Jackson Wyatt joins the Australian Army. 2011, May 2nd, Osama bin Laden is killed by SEAL Team 6. June, Benjamin Otter Lee gains international fame after stopping an Al-Qaeda knife attack in Hyde Park. August, Benjamin Otter Lee joins the British Commandos. September 6th, David Petraeus becomes director of the CIA under the presidency of Barack Obama. October 31st, Earth's population reaches 7 billion. December 15th, US forces withdraw from Iraq, ending the war there. Date unknown. Damian Raines redeployed in Afghanistan. Yegor Novak becomes a long-term associate and fixer for Nikolai. This will be called the longest week. Day 0, 0630. Sergeant Soap McTavish impresses John Price enough on his CQB test at Credenhill, UK, and is put on Price's team. Day 1, 0123 AM. Price, Gaz, Sergeant Soap McTavish and a small SAS team infiltrate an Estonian freighter in the Bering Sea, which is carrying nuclear material from the ultranationalists to Al-Assad. Russian MiGs attack the freighter and it is sunk just after Price, Gaz, Sergeant Soap McTavish and the rest of the SAS team escape. In a bloody coup d'etat, Khaled al-Assad takes over in a Middle Eastern country backed by Imran Zakhaev. Khaled al-Assad executes President al-Fulani. Zach Parker is undergoing some basic training at an unknown marine base. The base is then attacked by Op-4 and surviving Marines manage to escape the base. The Marines escape to an unnamed Middle Eastern town after intense house-to-house fighting. A helicopter arrives and rescues them. 2200 hours, Snowman and the rest of the SAS infiltrate the enemy ship and recover any nuclear devices found. Day 2, 0131. Price, Gaz and Soap McTavish infiltrates into the Caucasus Mountains to rescue their informant Nikolai from ultranationalist forces. Along the way, they provide Sergeant Kamarov sniper support for his attack on the village where Nikolai is being held. The SAS team successfully extracts Nikolai and exfils safely. 0302 to 0420. The helicopter carrying Price, Gaz, Soap McTavish and Nikolai are shot down by a SAM missile. The team continues on foot to a secondary extraction point, fighting through a large ultranationalist force. They are supported by an AC-130H Spectre gunship, call sign Warhammer/Wildfire, until they are rescued. 1345, USMC forces under the command of General Shepard invade Al-Assad's country, leading to a coalition force. In a coastal city, Lieutenant Vasquez, Staff Sergeant Griggs, Sergeant Paul Jackson and Marine forces are sent to extract Khaled al-Assad from a TV station where he is supposedly recording. They find that Khaled al-Assad is not at the TV station, but is in fact still on the run. Day 3, 0500 to 1630. Lieutenant Vasquez, Griggs, Paul Jackson and Marine forces break through to a disabled M1 Abrams tank codenamed Warpig stuck in a bog. 0800 hours. Zach Parker and Marines assault a compound and apprehend the bagman. During this operation, they rescue a team member and the rest of the team secure a wounded ally and defend the crash site. 1800 hours. After rescuing Warpig, Lieutenant Vasquez, Paul Jackson and Marine forces take on the Op-4 with Warpig in support, hoping to drive Khaled al-Assad's forces back to the capital city, where they would be surrounded. In the attack on the capital city, Yuri watches as Vladimir Makarov detonates a nuclear device from al-Assad's safe house, miles away from the blast radius. The detonation kills 30,000 Marines, including Lieutenant Vasquez and Sergeant Paul Jackson. Staff Sergeant Griggs survives due to him not being within the blast radius of the weapon. The approximate kill count of this detonation, according to the numbers I have on a 1 megaton nuclear device, would have serious effects / immediate death for anyone within 8 kilometers as a low estimate. According to Wikipedia, the last figures available is from 1996, with weapons having a payload of 510,300 kilotons of explosives, meaning that with this maths, we have a blast area of 8 kilometers by 510.3, which means 4,082 kilometers, with a population density of 48.08 per kilometer square, according to Wikipedia's idea of 2021. The confirmed kills would be 196,282 Afghan people, civilians and fighters, plus 3,000 Marines, meaning that this would lead to the deaths of 226,282 people from the blast alone. Day 4, O200. Price, Gaz, Sergeant Soap McTavish and an SAS unit infiltrate into Azerbaijan to locate Khaled al-Assad. Price interrogates Khaled al-Assad to find out the origin of the nuclear device. Al-Assad's phone rings and Captain Price answers it, revealing Imran Zakhaev to be behind the whole plot. Price then executes al-Assad. Small side note, the actions taken in this scene break a number of articles of the Geneva Convention and deem these actions a war crime, if not several. I will go through these in order. Article 12 shows that at this moment Khaled al-Assad is now the responsibility of the British government as he has been detained by the SAS. Articles 13 through 16 state that a prisoner of war must be treated humanely without any adverse discrimination and that their medical needs must be met. This is not complied with. Articles 17 through 20 dictate what information a prisoner must give: surname, first name, rank, date of birth, and army, regimental, or personal or serial number, and any interrogation methods that may be used by the detaining power. No physical or mental torture, nor any other form of coercion. These are not followed by Price, and Price kills an unarmed POW who should have been exfiltrated to the UK before questioning, while said POW is tied to a chair. This deems Captain Price a war criminal. 0940. Ultranationalist forces attack the village where the SAS team are held up. Price, Gaz, Soap and the SAS unit are rescued by a team of Marines led by Staff Sergeant Griggs. SAS operative Mac is confirmed dead in the events of this mission. Day 5, 0634. The combined SAS and USMC teams infiltrate southern Russia to find Viktor Zakhaev, Imran Zakhaev's son, and get intel on Imran's motives and whereabouts. Viktor Zakhaev commits suicide rather than surrender. Day 6, 0619. Imran Zakhaev delivers an ultimatum to British and US forces in Russia, or risks a nuclear attack. A team consisting of SAS and USMC forces lands at the Atlay Mountains in Russia to recapture an ICBM facility held by ultranationalist forces. Griggs is separated in the drop and is captured. Two RT-2 UTTH Topol M ICBMs, each containing 4 100-kiloton nuclear warheads, are launched at the eastern coast of the US. Bravo team fights through a heavily guarded perimeter of the ICBM launch facility and enters through the ventilation shafts. 0735. Bravo team fights through the facility to gain control of the control room, where Sergeant Soap McTavish successfully enters self-destruct codes to destroy the ICBMs mid-flight. As the enemy reinforcements are about to storm the facility, they escape by trucks from the vehicle depot. 0825. The team flee onto the mountain roads as trucks filled with enemy troops pursue them. A fuel truck explodes, incapacitating most of them. Staff Sergeant Griggs is killed in the firefight. Gaz is executed by Imran Zakhaev. Imran Zakhaev is killed in the conflict. Sergeant Kamarov arrives to rescue Sergeant Soap McTavish. Between 2011 and 2013, unknown date, during the festive season, a crash site in Afghanistan is found to be covered in Christmas lights, and Santa Claus is seen to give the gifts of explosive payloads to the fighters of both sides in the city. So I guess this proves that Santa doesn't care if you're of different religious views than a Western Americanized Protestant Christianity, because he delivers for operatives in this universe. Vladimir Makarov, Imran Zakhaev's protege, becomes the new head of the Russian ultranationalist party and commits various acts of terrorism. Vladimir Makarov begins working with the black market arms dealer Alejandro Rojas. The International Task Force 141 is created, consisting of American, Canadian, British and Australian forces. Among its special force members include US Army Rangers, US Navy SEALs, British SAS, as well as intelligence gathering from undercover agencies such as the CIA. American General Shepard is given the overall commander role of the Task Force 141. Simon Ghost Riley kills Kevin Sparks and Marcus Washington. Simon Ghost Riley kills Manuel Roba and later joins Task Force 141. The recently defeated Op-4 rebuilds its numbers and equipment and regains its power and confidence and invades Afghanistan. Simon Ghost Riley is sent to rescue hostages in a school in Ukraine. So just a small aside, during this time frame in the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 multiplayer, be it remastered or not, several weapons such as the Claymore are distributed to different combatants. These weapons are used in areas that outside of a multiplayer match could be accessed by civilians, which are deemed to be breaking Protocol 2 of the Convention for Conventional Weapons, as stated by the Geneva Convention, as they would be unable to detect the difference between enemy combatants and civilians. This can also be seen as a morally grey area with the use of airstrikes in potentially civilian-rich environments, especially as we see how these developed in the actual wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. 2012, June 28th, Uzbekistan withdraws from CTSO again. August 6th, the Curiosity lands on Mars. October, Jackson Wyatt is accepted into the 1st Commando Regiment of the Australian Special Forces. November 9th, David Petraeus resigns as director of the CIA. November, date unknown. Luke Fergie, iFerg, launches his YouTube channel. Date unknown. Benjamin Otter Lee passed the SAS selection. 2013, September 20th, Hurricane Erin hits Singapore, devastating the island. October 8th, Operation Kingfish is launched by Task Force 141 and Delta Force to eliminate Vladimir Makarov. This mission would fail. This team features Captain John Price, Captain Soap McTavish, Sergeant Simon Ghost Riley, Sergeant Gary Roach Sanderson, Master Sergeant Sandman, and Staff Sergeant Derek Frost Westbrook. Date unknown. John McClane and his son Jack complete a CIA assignment to stop the sale of weapons-grade uranium in Chernobyl, Ukraine. Alex joins the Special Activities Division (SA-ED) of the CIA. Omar the Wolf Suleiman declares his split with Western-backed forces. Between 2013 and 2016, date unknown, the Russian Ultranationalist Party defeats the Russian Loyalist Party both militarily and politically, effectively ending the Second Russian Civil War. Imran Zakhaev is turned into a martyr for Russia and a statue is built in his memory. Captain John Price is listed as MIA and is incarcerated in a Russian gulag for several years following his capture during Operation Kingfish. John Soap McTavish is promoted to captain and becomes field commander of Task Force 141. Macmillan becomes director of Special Forces of the 22nd SAS base in Hereford. Task Force 141's Team 11 conducts an operation to save a hostage from an ultranationalists aboard a plane. They save the hostage and freefall out to safety before the plane explodes. Unfortunately, there is the confirmed death of SAS member Echo 11 during this operation. 2014, April, Dmitry Bale rejoins Alpha Group. June 19th, thousands of rioters associated with Kurdistan descend upon Pyongyang and Tehran after planning through social media. June 22nd, Raul Mendez founds Kurdistan strike team. Date unknown. Kyle Garrick enlists for the British Armed Forces. Omar the Wolf Suleiman is severely injured in a Russian airstrike, losing most of his vision. Davis, Wayne and Alice conduct an unsanctioned assault on a Taliban stronghold to rescue Private Grayson Jeffries. Given the current state of the Middle East in universe and how it's about to go, I cannot imagine the knowledge of an unsanctioned operations being carried out whenever the powers that be or the operators choose is going to help any of that at all. It's just going to make things awful. Pre-2015. Date unknown. First world nations, USA, Russia, NATO, China and India, are crippled by the lack of Middle Eastern oil access and struggle to maintain order. Venezuela, Brazil and Chile unite to form the Federation of the Americas, allowing them monopoly of resources and consolidation of power over their neighbours, becoming an energy superpower. 2015, date unknown. Vladimir Makarov becomes the CIA's most wanted terrorist. General Diego Almagro leads the Federation of the Americas, or FOTA/FOTA, in an anti-American purge, imprisoning and or executing any American-born citizen of their nations. 20 UN peacekeepers are killed by FOTA and dumped in the ocean to be discovered by the USA. Delta Force raids one of the Wolf's training camps and discovers the name Raha. Jackson Wyatt is involved in special operations in Urzikstan. July 8th, 1246. Gabriel T. Rourke leads a squad of ghost operatives to hunt down and assassinate FOTA leader General Diego Almagro. Almagro is killed, FOTA floods the city of Caracas, Venezuela. Rourke is MIA. After July 8th, Rourke is captured by FOTA, tortured and converted to their cause. FOTA continue to grow in their superpower status by conquering Central America and the Caribbean. September 27th, Croatian fashion designer Narkis Dravinski showcased his Elbor 8 Mizvit collection in Milan, Italy. December 4th, Bobby Bucket, Bobby Plays, launches his YouTube channel. 2016, unknown date. A statue of Imran Zakhaev is constructed in memory of him, hailing him as a hero of Moscow. This now means that Imran Zakhaev has 2 statues potentially, or just for some reason the timeline talks about them twice. Probably 2 though. I mean I could look up how many of Churchill the UK has. There's probably loads. And don't even start on America and their founding fathers. Victor Zane Matiko resigns in protest after the Nigerian government ignored all of his 3 formal complaints, alleging the misappropriation of foreign aid intended for the fight against Al-Qatala. Interesting how there's so much of an anglicised name convention for Victor to go by here. It's just interesting that the good guy would have a very anglicised name. Also, the games and backstory do not mention what the money and aid is used for. Instead, it could have been used to boost agriculture or anything. Interesting that a captain in the army is annoyed that it's not used for fighting. This is kind of emblematic of America's engorged military budget, to see where that kind of thinking constantly gets you. August 10th, 1530. Private First Class Joseph Allen helps Sergeant Foley train Afghan troops at Firebase Phoenix in Afghanistan. Allen then runs a training course while being observed by General Shepard. 1608. Private First Class Joseph Allen and the US Army Rangers take a town in Afghanistan against the OP-4. General Shepard handpicks Allen to be reassigned to the CIA. During the mission launched on the OP-4 forces in Afghanistan, there are a number of locations that the US Marines fire upon that are easily still to some degree civilian targets. However, this is also a propaganda piece to almost absolve the American military's role in launching cluster weapons and the likes into civilian locations, with the hint that the enemy combatants might be there. This is what happens and how we end up with the massive civilian death tolls by US forces constantly throughout our globe and their global policing system. Between August 10th and 11th, Sergeant Foley, Corporal Dunn and Private James Ramirez and the rest of 1st Battalion 75th Ranger Regiment is rotated out of Afghanistan and returns home to the United States. August 11th, 7:35, Captain John Soap McTavish and Sergeant Gary Roach Sanderson infiltrate a Russian airbase in the Tian Shan Mountains of Kazakhstan in order to retrieve data from a satellite ACS module that fell into Russian hands. August 12th, 8:41, the Zakhaev International Airport massacre occurs. Vladimir Makarov shoots his teammate Yuri, who tried to stop the massacre beforehand. Makarov's teammates Lev and Kirill are killed in the fighting. Makarov fatally shoots a teammate Alexei Borodin, knowing that he is an embedded CIA agent. Private First Class Joseph Allen, as mentioned earlier. Russia then uses the massacre as a reason to declare war against the United States, a conflict that will ultimately lead to World War III. This is due to the fact that the mission is called No Russian. They never speak a word of Russian. The implication is that they are all American, especially when they find Joseph Allen's corpse. That is what is meant to link it all to the CIA rather than Makarov's group. Just an important clarification at this point. The death total for this day includes Inner Circle member Lev, Inner Circle member Kirill, Russian Air Force Major Petrov, the Zakhaev International Airport, of which, if we take the numbers from your average Heathrow in a specific window of an hour, we have about 7,991 passengers and staff. If we use LAX numbers distributed over 3 shifts, we have 16 2,667 staff members, so this can account for some of the police statistics. So at least 24,658, with an approximation of 7,991 being civilians. Also, Private First Class Joseph Allen. During this next segment, I would like to talk about the CIA. During the Black Ops series and also during Modern Warfare 2, we do experience the CIA. Also in the Modern Warfare reboot, the CIA have a very, very dark history, and the fact that this series has actually just shown them as wholly good and defending the freedom of the world and all that kind of thing is horrifying. The fact that the closest we get to having a conversation about it is that the American CIA do sign off on an operative being part of a massacre in Modern Warfare 2 should be seen as a questionable thing, but it's fed into the ends justify the means, which is a terrible, terrible viewpoint. Anyway, the CIA have had a long history of human rights abuses as well as covert actions that should just never have been done. There is a book by Tim Weiner called The Legacy of Ashes, A History of the CIA. I would recommend reading it. Anything that we can read and learn more about what the CIA have done, mainly because even the CIA have talked about this book and described it as a 600-page op-ed piece masquerading as serious history, which is hilarious because if it was that bad, they wouldn't have made a statement. So clearly, he hit a nerve. But we also have to talk about several points during this time. So first up, we will have a look at what is listed as their human rights concerns, which would be the fact that they have been using torture, funding and training the groups of organisations that would later participate in the killing of civilians and other non-combatants. This is a serious problem, mainly due to the fact that a number of these events would obviously be breaking of the Geneva Convention, but also this is basically what then America will fund a move out of a coup attempt from these groups. So these groups will overthrow democratically elected leaders, which is what obviously the Bay of Pigs is depicting, but then these groups that they have helped will go on to do atrocious things, and then America will go, don't worry, we're going to fix it, and they will set up somebody who is basically a puppet of the United States government. These are awful. They have done assassinations, they've done human experimentation. It has been so awful. There has had to be whistleblowers to bring about conversations of just fraud that happens in the CIA that basically fraudulently removes economic subsidies from different nations and basically funnels it back into the United States. A lot of this is also done in countries that the United States has also said they will give money to, so it's basically having all of the renown without any of the cost, literally financially. Operation Condor is something that you should read into if you do think that this is a serious problem. Operation Condor led to people like Pinochet. Pinochet was known to take his political opponents, who were usually left-wing, and throw them out of currently moving helicopters. This is why a lot of fascists who love Pinochet will use a helicopter emoji in their responses. This is just open advocacy for fascism, and the fact that we do not have anything critical of the CIA in this series, for that alone, is a problem. But we do have a number of other things. For example, the CIA's recruitment of Nazis, the Iran-Contra affair, drug trafficking, lying to Congress. The most recent thing that we have is the WikiLeaks disclosure of CIA cyber tools, which is also used in things like the improper search of computers used by Senate investigators, and a lot of basically hidden covert programs that they have been doing throughout the entire country and globe. These people will continually do what is in America's best interest, but mainly what is interestingly America's right-wing interests. They do not care who they hurt. They will just do what they think is serving their country, which usually just happens to be serving the worst actors of that country, which is interesting. Obviously, with Call of Duty not calling any of this out, and in fact actually heralding these people as heroes, or any bad thing that they do is them being switched over to the Russian side, that's a serious problem. That is a serious issue that is just, again, propaganda for America's interests as well as right-wing interests across the globe, because of the conversations in which they used people like Yuri Bezmenov in the advertising for Black Ops Cold War. They want to create a new Red Scare, and the idea that it's always the Reds who are always the exact same as the Soviet Union, who are always the exact same as every bad guy that you've always hated. That's because basically, with the collapse of Western capitalism, we have to realize that there are other solutions, and a number of people who make those suggestions have to be made quiet in the interest of basically keeping the whole ship afloat. And a number of those things do come from plans and things put ahead by the CIA, who should have been critiqued by this entire system, this entire series, but instead heralded them as heroes. August 13th, 1508, after receiving intel to link Alejandro Rojas to Vladimir Makarov, Task Force 141 journeys to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to capture and interrogate him. To find him, the team must take in Rojas' assistant after tailing him in a car. Meat and Royce are killed, leaving Roach to pursue Rojas alone while McTavish and Ghost are interrogating the assistant. The actions taken by McTavish and Ghost in this mission is the torture of a prisoner of war, which is, again, a war crime. We're going to be talking about that a lot. Captain McTavish successfully captures Rojas by grabbing him after jumping through a window and landing on top of a car. 1619, Task Force 141 escapes Rio de Janeiro from militia with the help of Nikolai, who is piloting a Pavlo. During the escape, Roach is separated from the rest of the squad and forced to run through the favelas alone before jumping off a building to grab hold of the Pavlo's ladder. Task Force 141 learns that the person Vladimir Makarov hates most in the world is being held in a gulag in Russia. General Shepard sends Task Force 141 along with the 6th Fleet and the US Navy SEALs to retrieve prisoner 627. Not 626 as I originally remembered, as this is Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. But it might be the same prison system. You don't know. You don't know if it's if actually that movie takes place in the same universe. But I am not covering it here. It is not confirmed. I'm not doing it. Until somebody confirms it, then I might revisit editing that into this video. Anyway, small note here is that not only is there the torture of a prisoner of war inferred in this situation to Rojas, but also the player can commit a war crime themselves and it is not punished by the game. If you shoot Rojas again, a breaking of the Geneva Convention, Article 13 to 16, says that POWs should be treated humanely. Torture and either being left to a militia while unconscious or being executed is not exactly humanely, or tending to their wounds and medical needs. Also, due to Article 12, Rojas and his assistant before him are responsibilities of the nation who have captured them and cannot be transferred to a non-member government, which the militia of Brazil would fall under that outside category. Therefore, either the United States or United Kingdom have committed a war crime in this time. As well, in the Geneva Convention, Articles 17 to 20, it dictates what information a prisoner must give: surname, name, first names and rank, date of birth, and army, regimental, personal or serial number, and interrogation methods that the detaining power may use: no physical or mental torture, nor any other form of coercion. It dictates what private property a prisoner of war may keep, and that the prisoner of war must be evacuated from the combat zone as soon as possible. None of these are upheld by Task Force 141 throughout this instance. In response to what they believe to be an American-supported terrorist attack, Russia attacks the United States by invading the East Coast, starting the Russo-American War. 1745, Private James Ramirez and the U.S. Army Rangers under the command of Sergeant Foley helps locate and protect the codename Raptor in northeastern Virginia, while also defending against invading Russians. 1851. Through the streets of Arcadia, northeastern Virginia, Ramirez, Foley, Corporal Dunn, and U.S. Army Rangers, aided by an IAV Striker, codenamed Honey Badger, assist the civilian evacuations whilst neutralizing anti-air guns and Russian personnel. The team locate General Shepard's high-value individual, the HVI, known as Ice Pick, who is dead in his home, believed to be killed by ultra-nationalists. Makarov's henchman Victor has been found in the home of the HVI, dead, killed by the HVI Ice Pick. There is obvious condemnation of the Russian forces to be made here. Before it is said, I do believe the actions are wrong. However, this is a fictional series of events, and also the point of propaganda is that you agree with the message it is trying to send. The commentary I will make here is based on the idea that America is almost showing how their actions in other countries are bad, while also trying to drum up support for the US military. Something that I can say will have worked on many people, as I have to say it started to work on me as a kid and my views on Western military practices and whether I would want to be part of that. This is what will need to be kept in mind for the duration of my coverage of Call of Duty's World War III content, as there is obviously faults here, but it is not completed by what are seen as the heroes and therefore narratively swept under the rug. We do need to talk about how this stuff is propaganda. Call of Duty has been used as a marketing tool for militaries in the Western Hemisphere for years. It's part of a recruitment tool. It's why Warzone was selected by the US Army's Twitch stream. It's everything to do with that, and that is why I'm discussing these things throughout. The death toll for this day includes high-value individual Ice Pick, Inner Circle member Victor, Inner Circle member Alejandro Alex the Red Rojas, Task Force 141 member Royce, Task Force 141 operative Driver, Task Force 141 operative Meat, Task Force 141 operative Merlin, Task Force 141 operative Chemo, Task Force 141 operative Rocket, US Army Ranger Private Morgan, US Army Ranger Private Wells. Those are the confirmed deaths. There will be a number of civilians, and that throughout because of the Russian invasion tactics. This is not a confirmed number, but it is to highlight the situation. This we will cover later on as to why I cover all these deaths throughout. August 14th, 0548, Captain John Soap McTavish, Sergeant Gary Roach Sanderson, and Simon Ghost Riley, alongside US Navy SEALs, rescue hostages and down SAM sites on Vikhorevka 36 oil platform near the coast of Russia. During this mission, Task Force 141 break the Geneva Convention for Conventional Weapons. After the mission allows you to do the second breaching, this is because the team set C4 on the bodies and use it as booby trap, something that is strictly limited in its allowances under Protocol 2. As well, this could line up with what could be deemed a crime against decency of combat in regards to the desecration of corpses. 0742, Captain John Soap McTavish, Sergeant Gary Roach Sanderson, and Simon Ghost Riley, alongside US Navy SEALs and other members of Task Force 141, launch an assault on the Gulag located 40 miles east of Petropavlovsk, Russia, to extract Prisoner 627, Captain John Price. 1122, Captain Price leads Task Force 141 to infiltrate a Russian submarine base located 14 miles south by southeast of Petropavlovsk, Russia. After securing the base, Captain Price launches an ICBM towards the east coast of the US, where it is detonated in the atmosphere. This produces an EMP that cripples both Russian and US militaries, experienced by Foley and his US Army Rangers at 1857. So we will be covering the time difference. It is not made prior knowledge that Captain Price is going to do this, however, nor is it that he is to shoulder any blame for the effects of the missile's explosion, including the death of a civilian/non-combatant at the destruction of the International Space Station. Also, they destroy the International Space Station. An ICBM as well is decreed as a non-conventional weapon and is only allowed as a nuclear deterrent by our Western-based leaders of the free world. This is where Captain Price commits a war crime, as it is fired towards a civilian area, as it is not disclosed where in the US it was planned to strike or how concentrated Russian forces were in that area, and faces no consequences for these actions. If anything, it is seen as a wholly positive thing by all those who interact with Price, and we will cover that later. 1834, Sergeant Foley leads Private James Ramirez, Corporal Dunn, and U.S. Army Rangers to defend the Washington Monument evacuation site from the view of the 5th floor of the Department of Commerce. Foley, Ramirez, and Dunn are evacuated by a UH-60 Black Hawk but are shot down by a SAM battery on top of the Department of Justice. This leads to a last stand attempt to push back the advancing Russian soldiers. Around pre-1857, General Shepard, while in a bunker in the Colorado Mountains, is afforded a blank check to do anything he can to secure Makarov. 1857, Sat-1 conducts extravehicular activities and is contacted by NASA to witness the destruction of the ICBM, which unexpectedly destroys the ISS. The EMP is put into effect. Foley, Ramirez, Dunn, and the US Army Rangers are able to launch a counterattack and make their way through the war-torn streets to the Eisenhower building and are able to retake Whiskey Hotel. The death total for this day includes the confirmed US Air Force Warhorse 5-1, US Air Force Warhorse 5-2, US Air Force Atlas 1-1, US Air Force Atlas 2-3, US Dagger 2-1, US Air Force Dagger 2-2, US Air Force Dagger 2-3, US Army Wolverine 1-2, US Army Delta 4-1, US Army Viper 3 actual, US Army CS Hunter 3, US Army Ranger Hunter 2-2, US Army Ranger Sergeant First Class Alvey, US Army Ranger Sergeant West, US Army Ranger Private First Class Evans, McLeod, another Evans, Morgan, Vinson, as well as US Army Rangers Privates Breton, Audette, Wade, and Sandler, as well as NASA employee Sat-1, also potentially known as George Davies. August 15th, 0700. US National Guardsman Sergeant Wilson, Captain Brewer, and Sergeant Vargas are sent to infiltrate a warehouse that is suspected of being a Russian weapons cache. 0900, Sergeant Andrews, Captain Dwight, and Sergeant Jenkins of the British Special Forces Support Group are deployed to recapture an Alaskan oil town, then to rendezvous with the US National Guard. 1536, Task Force 141 deploys Simon Ghost Riley and Gary Roach Sanderson, as well as other members, to the Georgian-Russian border in the Caucasus Mountains to search for Makarov's safe house, where he is suspected to be located. Shepard's actions would be seen as not only a war crime with the killing of Roach by immolation until death, but also with the desecration of a body, given that Ghost and Roach are burned alive and left in an unmarked grave. Well, Ghost is dead, but they're left burned and in an unmarked grave. 1603, Captain John Soap McTavish and Captain John Price are dispatched to the Boneyard, a US vehicle disposal yard 437 located 160 miles southwest of Kandahar in eastern Afghanistan. Here they are set upon by General Shepard's Shadow Company, a private military organization, as well as Makarov's troops. During the conflict, Price shares with Makarov Shepard's betrayal, and this strikes something the gentleman's agreement between Task Force 141 members and Makarov soldiers, for now. Between 1603 August 15th and 1732 August 16th, Price and Soap are marked as active war criminals and make an escape in the C-130 flown by Nikolai. 2200 hours, a joint strike force of the US Air Force and British SFSG are deployed to acquire suspected weapons cache. A total death of confirmed deaths today include Task Force 141 operative Gary Roach Sanderson, Task Force 141 operative Simon Ghost Riley, Task Force 141 operative Archer, Task Force 141 operative Toad, Task Force 141 operative Ozone, Task Force 141 operative Scarecrow, Task Force 141 operative US Navy SEAL Peasant. August 16th, 10 a.m. Sergeant Wilson, Captain Brewer, and Sergeant Vargas of the US National Guard are sent to reclaim an oil station in Alaska. 1200 hours. Sergeant Franks, Captain Ramirez, and Sergeant Benson, as well as Sergeant Travis of the US National Guard, are deployed to Nevada's suburbs in order to recapture the area, both eliminating Russian forces and provide assistance for allies. 1300 hours. During the evacuations going on in Nevada at the time, US Air Force Thunder is deployed to protect civilians. 1400 hours, Sergeant Franks, Captain Ramirez, Captain Mercer, Sergeant Benson, and Sergeant Travis of the US National Guard are sent to eliminate Russian forces alongside Delta Team in the Nevada mountains. 1500 hours, Sergeant Noyce, Captain Hughes, Sergeant Cole of the British SFSG are deployed by US Air Force pilot Cowboy to remove exterior forces from the Hoover Dam. 1530, US Air Force pilot Hunter is sent with an AC-130 gunship to eliminate mobilizing Russian forces at the Baltimore airport. Sergeant Noyce, Captain Hughes, and Sergeant Cole of the British SFSG enter the Hoover Dam to disarm a number of suspected explosives and to remove all Russian forces within. At the end of the mission, the whole team are lost due to an explosive that was unable to be disarmed. 1600 hours, Sergeant Ridley, Captain Lewis, Sergeant Traskell, and US Air Force pilot Hunter and the British SFSG are deployed to push Russian forces out of Baltimore airport. Sometime after 1600 hours, US tank team Warlord pushed through a Baltimore suburb to clear the way to the port. 1732. Price and Soap arrive at Site Hotel Bravo in Afghanistan, known only by those who have been there, and Makarov as a confirmed number. This mission is to pursue and eliminate General Shepard. 1810. Price and Soap pursue Shepard in his escape from Site Hotel Bravo while trying to fight off both Shadow Company and OPFOR militia. The fight finishes with a 2-on-1 CQC battle between Price and Soap versus Shepard, ending with Shepard being beaten and killed with a knife to the eye. Price, Soap and Nikolai go into hiding, with the following organizations hunting them: the US government, OPFOR militia of Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Iraq and Afghanistan; Shadow Company, Makarov's Inner Circle, the Central Intelligence Agency; the United States Marine Corps, the US Army Rangers, the Russian ultranationalist government, African and Brazilian militia, National Security Agency, the GIGN, the Bundeswehr, Czech Resistance, MI5, MI6, British Armed Forces, and more, all of whom will need to be convinced of the truth behind the remaining Task Force 141's account. 1900 hours, Sergeant Trent, Captain Jane, Sergeant Case, Davis, Hunter, and the US National Guard stage an attempt to push Russian forces out of Baltimore's port. The death total for today includes United States Army Lieutenant General and Task Force 141 American Lead Shepard, Shadow Company Operative Disciple 4, 6 soldiers and 2 attack dogs; Shadow Company Operative Disciple 5, 2 soldiers; Shadow Company Operative Disciple 6, squad between 5 and 7 members; Shadow Company Operative Disciple 9, squad between 5 and 7; Shadow Company Operative Butcher 1, squad between 5 and 7; Shadow Company Operative Butcher 2, squad between 5 and 7; Special Forces Support Group Operative Sergeant Noyce; the Special Forces Support Group Operative Corporal Hughes; Special Forces Support Group Operative Sergeant Cole; US Air Force Pilot Hunter, as he is not mentioned again and may as well have vanished. August 17th, dawn. Sergeant Trent, Captain Jane, Sergeant Case, Davis and the United States National Guard finally push Russian forces from Baltimore port and secure the WMD. Morning. John Price, Soap McTavish and Nikolai arrive in Himachal Pradesh, India, to support the medical care of Soap following his stabbing in Afghanistan by Lieutenant General Shepard. 9:51 a.m. Former Spetsnaz, new member of Task Force 141, Yuri works with Captain John Price and Nikolai to evacuate an injured Captain Soap McTavish after their hospital is attacked by Makarov's Inner Circle and the Russian military. 10:18. Delta Force Team Metal, Staff Sergeant Derek Frost Westbrook, Master Sergeant Sandman, Sergeant First Class Grinch, Sergeant First Class Truck, US Army Ranger Corporal Suki, Team Anvil, Captain Grizzly, Thumper and Worm, alongside more Delta Force and US Army Rangers, are deployed to Wall Street, Manhattan, in order to take back the financial district from the Russian stronghold that has been created. 1632, Delta Force Team Metal Sergeant Derek Frost Westbrook, Master Sergeant Sandman, and Sergeant First Class Grinch, Sergeant First Class Truck are sent to cooperate with US Navy SEALs to infiltrate and cripple Russian Oscar II class submarine located in the New York harbor. Between August 17th and October 3rd, Soap, Price, Nikolai, and Yuri escape Makarov's forces to arrive in Africa. Whilst here, Soap recovers from his knife wound. The team take part in a mission in Parrot's Beak, Guinea. The team protect a courier transferring $600,000 worth of gold to a plane in the international airport located at Accra, Ghana. October 3rd, Russian President Boris Vorshevsky flies to Hamburg to negotiate a peace treaty with NATO. 1830, the flight is hijacked by Makarov's ultranationalists. FSO agents defend the president. The plane crashes over Eastern Europe. Elena Vorshevsky is secured, but Boris is taken hostage by Makarov to get nuclear codes from him. The death total for today includes confirmed FSO agent Andrei Kharkov, FSO agent Leonid Pudovkin, FSO agent Anton Fedorov, FSO agent Aloyshka Tarkovsky, Russian government official Vasily Zhukov, Russian government official Pavel Morozov, Russian official Bogdan Sokolov, Russian government official Anya Kovaleva. October 5th, 1827. Price, Soap, and Yuri infiltrate Sierra Leone to discover where Makarov's chemical weapons are being transported from. October 6th, 4/11, SAS team including Sergeant Marcus Burns, Sergeant Walcroft, and Corporal Griffin, the guy from the first Modern Warfare mission, which is cool, he got promoted, sneak through London to neutralise Russian threats and stop suspected bomb trucks. One of the trucks explodes. Later in the day, the Davis family are seen enjoying their family vacation when a chemical weapon is released by a box truck near the Palace of Westminster, going off and killing the family and many more. 1301, Delta Force operatives, US Army Rangers, USMC forces push back the land invasion made by Russian forces in Hamburg to rescue the current sitting vice president. Isn't it weird how at this point you're not working alongside Germany's own military? We've had them mentioned earlier, they feature in the multiplayer, they have the models, they know they're there, and they just don't use them. It's just America. That's again back to our propaganda problem. The death total for today includes SAS Corporal Griffin, GIGN Commander Morrill, US Army Soldier Carter, M1A2 Abrams Tank Crew Rhino 1, M1A2 Abrams Tank Crew Rhino 3, UH-60 Black Hawk Crew Helix 3-2, M1A2 Abrams Tank Crew Rhino 4, M1A2 Abrams Tank Rhino 5, M1A2 Abrams Tank Crew Rhino 6. The Davis family, Mr. and Mrs. Davis and their daughter Sarah Davis. If the Paris attack is anything to be an example, then throughout all the cities attacked, we have an approximate of 103,974 deaths, most of whom would be civilians or non-active military combatants. I'm going to just use this as a time for a side note. It is utterly wild, in my opinion, how Call of Duty just chucks this out and then acts like it's just a number. This is like, if you take that number, this is 98.3% of the country of Micronesia is just wiped out. Or, for example, the population of Monaco is taken out 2.7 times over. Like, that's a pretty major issue, and most of these are civilians. Like, why are we not... This seems weird that it's like, oh, well, it's just a number. Like, it's just mentioned in a cutscene. It's not, like, shown this devastation and, like, giving you a moment to, like, think about it. You just jump into the next mission as if nothing's the matter. So yeah, I just wanted to cover that. That's weird. Civilian casualties are just seen as a random number now, which obviously reduces the tone of the severity of certain actions, but also the fact that one military soldier gets like an entire, almost entire swan song when they know they signed up for this military operation, when civilians are just massacred in the millions, and it's just not talked about. It's just important, obviously. It's the inherent political nature of this franchise, even if they don't want to admit it. October 8th. 0930. Price, Soap, and Yuri are given a lead by Price's old superior, Macmillan. This leads them to Somalia to interrogate Warabe, an African arms dealer. Price then executes Warabe after first threatening him with death by chemical weapon, which is another breaking of several articles of the Geneva Convention. October 9th, 1410. Delta Force Team Metal are deployed to Montmartre Hill in Paris to secure bomb maker Volk alongside operatives from the GIGN. October 10th, 2136. Price and his team infiltrate Russian-occupied Prague with the help of Sergeant Kamarov, hoping to set up an assassination of Makarov. October 11th, 701. The mission fails when it is learned about by Makarov, leading to the destruction of the sniper's nest and losing a number of members standing with Task Force 141 against Makarov. Soap informs Price that Makarov knows Yuri, but gives no extra clues, and we are to wonder why Price, a man prone to insane bouts of violence, would flip out at this moment. Soap chose to cause this fist fight and this fracturing of Task Force 141. This whole thing of Yuri knows Makarov. You could have said Yuri literally went against Makarov, or used to work for him and betrayed him, or tried to stop the massacre. Like, there's a whole thing there. Like, you don't have to word it as like Yuri knows Makarov or Makarov knows Yuri. It's a whole thing. It's really weird. Anyway, this operation's casualties include Task Force 141 operative John Soap McTavish, Russian loyalist Sergeant and Task Force 141 operative Kamarov, the unnamed Czech resistance leader, and a number of the Czech resistance. So there is an unconfirmed amount of deaths. October 12th, 2248. Price and Yuri infiltrate the stronghold of Makarov's inner circle and learn they have a plan to kidnap Elena Vorshevsky in Berlin. This operation's casualties include Inner Circle and Ultranationalists commander Alexei, alongside a number of other people. October 13th, 1018. Delta Force Team Metal alongside German Bundeswehr forces move to secure Elena Vorshevsky through the contact of Nikolai. Interesting how the German Bundeswehr are back. Today's casualties include Delta Force Team Granite members, leading up to a subtotal of 29 casualties, German Tank Commander Squad Leopard, leading up to 3 casualties, another squad of US Army Rangers, which is usually about 10 people, which potentially includes Sergeant Kelly and Private Grant, who will have been seen by the player in previous missions or this mission. October 14th, 1108, a joint operation of Task Force 141 and Delta Force arrive in eastern Siberia to find and rescue President Vorshevsky. Today's casualties include the